I like AI art, and the people who don't seem to be the one telling you that AI is going to enslave you, and they're the same people who've already enslaved humanity, which furthers my resolve. This is real science. I am Andreas. What's up, Bernie? How are you doing?
Hello, hello. Yes, it is, and there can be some creepy parts of AI art, but overall, it's pretty awesome, and like it saves hours and days of time for
human labor.
Yeah, human labor for a cool intro, and welcome Jeremy as well.
Jeremy, AlienScientist, how you doing, man? Good to have you back. What's up?
Hey guys,
live on all three.
Dude, live in Boston. And then Matt Rife is with us again. So we can go deeper into the Royal Rife technology and everything he's doing. What's up, Rife? How are you? Oh, you got muted. The sound is muted somehow.
Weird.
It might be the input. While you're working on it's probably the flipper. Someone with another flipper has gotten in and gotten you. Brittany's here. What's up, Brittany? How are you?
Hello. I'll be popping in and out and just listening and learning.
Legit. Well, we appreciate all the things that you have to say, so feel free to throw in the data and the questions. We love it. Nathan's also back. What's up, Nathan? How are you?
I'm good. How you guys doing?
Omoro. Sorry.
Omoro
is with us, which is pretty exciting. Matt Rife, is that working? Can you
let me check.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, I hear you. There you go.
Okay, good. I can put these away. So Jeremy and I, AlienScientists, actually have a mutual friend that he does not know about. Her name is Eden of London. It's not her real name. Eden me to come onto your podcast for a while. And we also we also have another friend. It's a guy here in the U.S. that knows, I think it's Michael J. Fox, something like that. Big with crypto. I forget. We can talk about that later, but we actually have two friends.
Interesting.
Was he on the last stream with us? The other guy who knows, because I know there's another guy out there. He knows a bunch of people in Hollywood and stuff. His name's also Jeremy.
It's not Jeremy. I'll ask Eden really quick because I'm really bad with names, but I'm good with facts.
I know that Michael J. Fox wore this hat, so we're ready to go. If we're gonna do some Rife healing in 2015, the future. Wait, it's no longer the future. But also Julia is with us. How are you, Julia?
I'm excited to be here. I love these topics. People to talk about these topics with, right?
Yeah, right. It's gonna be exciting.
And to dive deeper into the science of it. And there's so many different applications between the coils, the agriculture, the potential healing. And then also I want to make sure before it's all done, we also look into the microscope, because that was absolutely fascinating. And you mentioned the other day you might still have access to the original designs.
So I do have access to the original designs. I apologize. I went to church this morning, went and hung out with the pastor this afternoon, and then I got back and I was getting ready for the podcast. So I didn't have time to look anything up. But yeah, I'll fully disclose every bit of that to everybody.
That is awesome, right? It's sharing is caring, and for just the knowledge of science and everybody who wants to learn and apply it to the world.
Oh, obviously we don't expect to take a day because there's like going to be thousands of pieces of paper that are going to show up. But one thing, just before we get into the deep stuff, the other day, I just want to segue for a second. We were talking a bit about the Flipper Zero as an example. I was like, so here's a thing people are calling a weapon that's just really a tool, right? And it's showing you how medicine and healing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Flipper Zero, portable multi-tool for pen testers and geeks. It's great, right? And it allows you to scan all sorts of signals. You can scan NFC, near frequency communication. You do Bluetooth. There's all kinds of different things you can use this for to control your TV or your friend's TV, or open your garage door, or lock or unlock or whatever kind of thing. It's pretty amazing. But yes, because of that, it could be used to open all doors, which could be used for nefarious purposes. So people are like, well, nobody should have this tool because, you know, even though it's super freaking useful, somebody might use it for evil. Anyway, Rife, you were gonna show you actually check this out. My man, he's got one himself, so it's not even just sort of this abstract idea anymore. Here it is.
So let me go ahead and explain this. Yeah, it can be used for nefarious purposes, and I'm not trying to bring up politics or anything else.
Of course,
but you can buy a hammer from Home Depot, and until you use it for bad, it's not a bad thing. You're not going to.
That little adorable dolphin is. That dolphin is. Look at how cute that little thing is. Come on.
I just say that a hammer from Home Depot can't just like bypass security systems the way that you can do with one of those things, though. I mean, having worked in electronic security at like local hospitals,
I would argue though that a hammer could bypass many a window door
or security guard, right? That's the real issue.
Yeah, but until you use it for nefarious purposes, it's not a nefarious thing. It's a tool.
It's
right.
just a tool. It's just you could.
Yeah, but you could do so many great positive things with these things. I mean, imagine all the great things you can do. You could save. You could have. Let's say you've got 30 digital dongles and credit cards and everything. You can put it all on one little device. Let's say
30 dongles.
Yeah. Let's say you get locked out of your car or something like that. You want to get back in. I don't know. There's a lot of ways you could be using this for good instead of evil. People have made it seem like it's bad.
For example, I'll tell you, a condo at the beach in Orange Beach, Alabama, there's only one clicker to get the turnstile to turn up. But I was able to read it after I read the frequency, and I could emulate that, and I was able to come in with 2 vehicles as there were 2 parking spots, but we only had 1 controller.
Right? So pretty useful, pretty awesome. Has an adorable dolphin. That dolphin is your friend. It's like Echo the dolphin. You can't doubt that dolphin. So I don't know. I just wanted to say.
That's the talk, boy.
They didn't even pay us for this. I'm just saying, like, support your local hacker company, because hacking is hacking, and hacking isn't bad. Hacking is just like changing the world. Hacking is what you do to a sculpture to make it more beautiful.
Yep.
They started this thing on GoFundMe, and it was like it raised $4.6 million to like build the first prototypes of it. But it's all open source, and it's a pretty interesting thing. I was just
you can go on GitHub and you can get like unleashed version because it's geo-located. Like for the US, I cannot save credit cards or anything else on it unless I go through and I say, oh yeah, specifically I want to do an NFC-A card, and then I can save it, and then I can use my credit card somewhere else. But all of this stuff is coming into controversy because a lot of people are like, oh, it's a tool, it's this and that. It is sold out.
It's totally sold out, but the point is, like you said, it's open source. So what you can do is you can get a $15 Raspberry Pi, $30 worth of accessories for the thing, 3D print a case if you really want, or just put it into some of a matchbox. But the thing is enough there, then you would be able to have, you download the software and run it. This is open source. You don't need to buy the thing to have it, which is one of the main reasons we're promoting it, I guess.
Yeah, you're paying for the hardware.
Well, not only promoting that, but even on the control board, like they have wireless connection that you can plug into it, and it's 3D printed cases. But I'm kind of wondering, because of all the controversy coming from China, can we help kind of fund the science community by building one together?
I mean, absolutely. All you need are probably so instead of an Arduino, we found launch kits, like the Texas Instruments Launchpad kits are cheaper. It's like $1.60 instead of $20 or $40 for the set. Sorry, Jeremy, go ahead.
Yeah, Anthony has a good question about this firmware link, because apparently it's gone off a lot of people. So we gotta that'll be useful to program that stuff in there. I just want to see what kind of security protocols it has and what kind of limits and capabilities that this thing actually has.
So I've gone flipper0.1/update, and it looks like you can download the update directly from there, and the source code is available on QFlipper. If you go to Flipper devices, it looks like. But if you're saying it was, so you're saying like last month it was scrubbed, is that a real thing?
I don't know. That's what people are saying, or just asking, looking for it. So it's having a hard time. I don't know if This seems like one of those things that people, like the intelligence.
If it was up, it's out there, and we'll find a copy and put it in the Discord.
Check on Amazon. Check on Amazon. My business partner just bought one for like $300. The prices are only going to go up. I was part of the last shipment that come in from China to get one of these.
The old school way of doing this.
So the thing is, there's going to be these. If you find the old firmware, at least, then start looking for the forks of the firmware in GitHub. So this is one of the fun things: is once somebody forks it, then you find the Dark Flippers Unleashed firmware. So there's going to be other kinds of firmwares out there for the device. They're based on that firmware.
I'm more than willing to ship this one around throughout the science community, let you guys play with it and everything else. And at the end of the day, just ship it back to me. Just send it throughout everybody. Let you guys.
First person I nominate is Jeremiah. Jeremiah for sure, because he's
going to tear this thing apart and build 20 of them.
Yeah,
that's it.
Before, we used to use this thing called a SDR, which is a software-defined radio, and it's like a chip. It's like a radio that you can plug into your computer that you could read and send on different signals and frequencies. So like you could set these things up to pick up pretty much anything, and so you could read off your remote fob or a garage door opener or things like that, and then it just emulates the signal. It's kind of like those it records and plays back. It's called DRFM technology, direct radio frequency memory, something like that. DRFM, digital radio frequency.
Oh, you got a glitch going on, Jeremy.
Memory.
So I'll fill in for him until he comes back.
Yeah, they don't like you talking about stuff.
So I can show you right now, whenever I go to sub-gigahertz, and I can do the frequency analyzer, you see it 0, and right here's my key fob to my car. I'll just lock my car.
Wow.
And it automatically logs it in. But here's the problem. So a car's vehicle, it has a brain computer, and if I were to use this, I could only use it once, because it analyzes a signal and then it switches to a different gigahertz level. So it unpairs my key fob. So it's a safety feature. It's already built into vehicles. I know we've seen people on TikTok to be able to change a gas station, whatever signs, or unlock a vehicle or start a vehicle. And you can do that. I'm not going to do that. It's just like a hammer. But it's something that it disrupts your life more than it helps your life, unless you're somebody that's committing crimes and nefarious acts.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like the teenage kids who are bringing this to the arcade and they're using it to play the Ninja Turtles arcade machine over and over again and saving thousands of dollars. I forgot my point. I forgot my point. Anyway.
I didn't, that's a good point. I didn't know I could do that.
You're going to be nefarious. I mean, it's a lot safer to steal free arcade games than it is to say, break into.
But it's wrong. That was the point, right?
Wasn't it? Tearing up Dave and Buster's left and right.
That was the point. Well, Bernie, we could, or also Jeremy, do you want to look at some other stuff? There's some things I was thinking about with the UAP information yesterday. The flight report, as boring as it was, they keep labeling it like no evidence of alien pilots, which is like, okay, yeah, sure, but doesn't that kind of insinuate maybe these are UAP drones, right? Because they're saying these are maybe unmanned or unaliened pilots, that these are maybe these solid state things. And it reminded me of those solid state ionic lift UAP patents. Remember what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Well, one of the things is the flight characteristics of these things. Humans can withstand probably like 9 Gs before we start to pass out. I think it's higher actually for women. Women can actually undergo a couple more Gs than men can.
Nice. Good job, women.
If it's really a function of that, then that's why a lot of hypotheses that these are UAVs or do not have human pilots, because either they're altering the space time around the craft so that they don't experience G forces or their robots. One or the other. It just doesn't make sense for humans to be pulling those kind of G's.
Yeah, right.
It, like somehow also neutralizes inertia along with gravity in the field weld that it would make. Correct?
Yeah, it creates a time bubble.
Well,
Yeah,
Jeremiah and I were hypothesizing on this earlier, and I thought I had a good idea on it, and he was firing back with me on things way above my head. I wish Jeremiah would come on, but it's
we have Gerald and Unit Matthew, so it's only a moment of time before the exotic propulsion warps.
He just thinks he's Jim Morrison. You know what it is. Give him time.
Late entry. So,
and now, the moment you've all been waiting for, Elvis Presley has entered the building. Yeah, okay. All right. Glad you made it.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me figure out where this stream is playing in the background and stop it. Jeez.
There he is.
All right, but as much as we love you, Jeremy had showed me something a long time ago. Not that long, but these days, any 24-hour period feels like a year. So probably a few weeks ago, we were talking about lasers on the ends of jets. And he was showing me these freaking crazy patents that are designed to burn the oxygen into a perfect vacuum ahead of the jet, so that there's no turbulence, no friction from the air. It's actually being sucked into, beyond what we refer to space vacuum. It's like a Belson Bell vacuum, right, Jeremy? Back me up. Am I right? What am I talking about?
Is it the Kevin Kremeyer patents with a K? I think those are the ones. There's a bunch of laser patents by that guy with some interesting stuff. They can, that dude right there.
I think this is it, right? And he's got lasers involved with jets, and also the thing is that the plane was going to go so fast it was going to tear itself apart unless you destroyed all the oxygen. Right
now, let's pay attention to this really quick. And I don't mean to cut you off. Go ahead and do your thing, Jeremy. But I just want to bring up this picture.
Where's it?
I like this. I gotta find this patent too, because if we're going to talk about high power lasers, there's this wonderful patent by Boeing of a concentric half tube laser, and so they've taken basically a series of concentric pipes, they split them right down the center, so you've got these kind of C-shaped sections. They're all stepped and tapered out from each other, and the way that it works is it initiates much like a transverse electric mode laser, one of those little T lasers with the two parallel channels, and then it, almost like focus fusion, crams all the energy into the center from all of these varying layers, phases them, and then blasts it all out the end. And so it's a laser system designed to generate like long megawatt pulses, very much just like what we have on Real Genius. It actually would be laid out in a casing that would end up being shaped kind of like that, not quite as bulbous on the side, but it would need that type of shape in order to work. So I thought it was just fantastic when I seen it. I have to find the damn thing again, because I have a feeling that it's not going to be up on Google anymore.
It's a pod racer.
And I did not title it, so it's just a freaking number on my computer somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, the idea of a jet turbine for a laser, I guess at a certain point, that's where we're going. But also the idea of the laser being useful on a number of levels for completely destroying the atmosphere and anything that's in its path.
Plasmatizing in front of it, right? Creating a plasma field.
Yes. So that's what I was wanting to touch on, if you guys don't mind me jumping in. If you want to go back to that picture really quick.
Yeah. This one?
So you see where it says rotary spherical injector and fuel reheater. Go down. There you go. So it's going to shoot out in the middle, and it's creating a cylindrical pattern, which is also creating something that's like a magnetic field pattern. And we all use the right-hand effect on magnetic fields on the rotation. But then look at the cone and the nozzle going out. And I don't know if you have something that can do a degree separation up on that. And it goes exactly into the nozzle. So I'd be interested to see what that degree is and what that coincides with. Now, within our air, because if you look at the Tic Tac UFO, you'll see that it's shaped just like an oxygen molecule. Just like the other night, I was showing you guys that whenever you create a 104 degree dipole antenna to be able to separate and do electrolysis through sound waves and everything else, that you need to have an equivalent antenna to be able to work within the things that you do. So look up the Tic Tac UFO, and then look up the oxygen molecule and look at how they're similar.
Yeah, this will be helpful too, because you and I were talking about this last time and we didn't pull up the pictures. Oh, I see exactly what you mean now. Now what you were saying the other day makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, see how that correlation has to happen to be able to, if you want to be able to, you have to resonate with it to be able to work within it. So even within our atmosphere through hydrogen and hydrogen separation, I have to be able to build like a 3-chain connection with plasma.
There it is.
At the right frequency. Yeah.
I found it. I found the patent that I was looking for. It's US 1127135.
1127135. Okay.
Check this super weird thing out.
Yeah. So see those magnetic fields. Oh, gee.
Well,
okay.
Those are actual concentric cylinders. That's not a representation of fields.
Yeah, that was just me spouting out at the mouth in the beginning.
I just wanted to clarify real quick.
So when imitating field forces, you get crazy effects essentially.
Yes, what they've done is they've put the put the cylinder walls and aligned them exactly in the same spot where the field lines would flow. So they are using that precisely.
They've just made channels.
Yeah, but this thing can generate massively powerful, continuous or long pulses of beam energy, and this is obviously it's a weapon system. So
you're a weapon system. I don't know. This seems like a good thing. You could definitely use this laser to send data communication system. What's the laser internet? Google. What the heck is that called? They got this thing, laser powered internet, 20 gigabit per second. These lasers are mounted. They're supposed to put them on the loom balloons as well, so that they can shoot internet from one laser to another laser, have fiber optics over laser band, right? Something like that.
That takes a lot of alignment. That takes a lot of like shooting azimuths and everything. So how do they plan on doing this?
it's self-correcting. Once it basically flashes past it, the other one will send it back a signal, and then the two will constantly compensate for motion with each other. You can put that thing right on the front of a plane and have no problem.
It's called Tara, which is good. But they attach that to Loom, and Loom is Loon X Google. Is that it?
Jam the temperature and like heating up the air with laser-induced plasma effect of the air between it and jam the signals.
These balloons are supposed to stay up with ammonium oxide or dioxide or something like that. So ammonium sulfate gas or chlorine ammonium or something. And so the sun hits it, it heats it up, it stays up in the air for months at a time. And then they'll attach these lasers to them, which they'll GPS when they start to come down. If they ever do, then they can come replace them.
Oh, those are awesome. I would love to get one of those.
Ballasts too that keep it at the perfect altitude in different weather conditions and temperature conditions.
So why are we not using the Earth as internet? Is it because it's uncontrollable at that point? It's not deep. It's not centralized.
There's lossy on signals intelligence for fiber optics and stuff right now, and then I don't know. Like that's probably a technical question on like bandwidth and other factors, because I'd assume that these things don't work as well in like snow or rain conditions, like when anything that would block the air transmission passage of that signal. So yeah, I think that these have their limitations, whereas hardwired systems of like fiber optic networks that are in typical internet backbones. It's a question for the internet backbone companies that host.
Actually, I've delved into this. Let's look past hardwired. Let's look at the best conductor of electricity that ever was and ever will be. It's the actual Earth. because I've sent wireless electricity over 650 miles, and I've also made phone calls through the sinusoidal wave that the Earth resonates at 5.3 megahertz. In fact, an engineer that I know, it's not my creation, it's his creation, to where it's wireless internet, but it's decentralized. So is it more control, or is it more, let's have you have access to it?
I mean, Eric Dollard did wireless internet, or sorry, wireless communication, wireless phone calls, or a wireless fax machine, or something like that. So, I mean,
that's what this is based off of.
It seems like this is definitely technology that can work, that we can use. I think maybe when you have a bunch of different things, you might at a certain point of busyness get signal busyness where you know, this is a
noise.
if everything starts to get filled up, then you'll start to notice noise. Like if you had if you had every device in your home, instead of it having a wire, had its own radio station frequency, at a certain point you jam up so many frequencies, and then can pile that with everyone else's radio frequencies in the neighborhood. Yes. You know,
that happens every few years with UHF and VHF systems, and the military buying out bands. And so I used to be in music sales, and we would have to resell the same wireless equipment to these performers because their band is no longer useful.
Yeah.
So let's look at
their band is no longer useful. I see what you did there, guitar.
FCC compliance sucks, right? Because we're dealing with air signals. But the great thing is we don't have to worry about FCC compliance whatsoever when we transmit through the ground.
Yeah, and let's just take. Okay, so they just gave up, 600 to 900 megahertz that they used to use for police bandwave to other people because the bandwave changed. I forget the exact numbers if I'm wrong, sorry. But let's look at it like this. Why can we not send 20 terabytes of data faster than the speed of light to someone else? And, okay, let me start with this. I'm sorry. Wireless internet works like this. If I build a coil, and it's at 920 kilohertz or megahertz, and you build a coil that's 920 megahertz, and I put electricity into the ground with one wire, it's going to go ahead and send that signal through the earth and go exactly to where you are. This is how we've done it. This is how it's been sent. Now, if I'm sending a wireless electrical charge through the earth and you're getting it faster than the speed of light, why can I not modulate that signal with data? And that modulation with data means that that data is going faster than the speed of light. But if you have servers set up with IP addresses, then why not have different sections on top of the globe for wireless internet to be able to be transferred, and then transferred from your IP provider, your internet provider, to your house through wire or through fiber optic?
That's fine if you have a noise cancellation system. So if you have everybody on the 5 gigahertz spectrum or the 2 gigahertz spectrum or whatever, as long as everyone's on the same band, and so all the sounds are happening simultaneously, but each phone's able to pick up in this screaming chaos your phone's message to their phone, right? So all the messages are kind of heard, but they're only decrypted by end to end. And so that's, I think, the system we're moving towards, where we don't, each one of us and each one of our devices in the IoT take up all of the frequencies. Because the other thing to consider, you know, again, is whales. No, but just all animals in general, like birds too. The more we take up the frequencies, it affects nature and migratory paths, which is interesting.
So is that similar to, if you remember, DHL or DSL, whenever it come in, that you had to put a noise filter up on your phone versus internet?
Yep.
Sort of. That's, yeah, because on a cable, the cables next to each other, enough energy is flowing through the cable, it'll pick up noise from the other side of the cable. And one of the ways that you can do that is balanced audio cable, and this is the same thing for any cable.
Well, you should be able to do it through shielded cable, because a phone is only tip and ring. It's 2 wires.
But there's a distance that's traveled, and then there's energy that's picked up, and if there's multiple signals on the wire, then that starts to matter. So what you want to do is you want to have the same signal played inverted on a balanced line upside down, right? So that way, when it comes back, the noise that's been picked up is figured out between the two signals, and then the reduced correct signal is found. But that
right, when the
requires
two waves are mixed back together, anything that was different at all between them from one side to the other, and that's generally where the noise comes in, automatically is filtered out, because only something that's exactly the same in balance can get through.
The opposite of that is an unbalanced audio signal, which is totally fine if you've got like 3 feet or less of cable, 6 feet or less of cable. Because
or if you love the 60 hertz hum coming through your system, and that just pleases you to hear the sound of your power line.
Yeah.
Oh, is that Jeremiah here?
That's him. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be me.
Okay.
He's the Elvis Presley. But so
no, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you for teaching me that.
Then you'd have when you plug your phone into a headphone set, it doesn't balance it because it's a short enough line. So you'll have signal 1 and signal 2, which is why you can't plug those into a normal thing, because it's going to try to reverse those signals, pull out the signal in between them, and it'll get some weird The Fly Jeff Goldblum thing. So you don't try to balance stereo and balanced signals is the point. But yeah, you can end up with a much clearer signal if you have 2 bands that are sending the data, one inverted from the other is the more broad point here. So you could have 2.4 and 2.6 or whatever, or as long as they're far enough apart that there's a gap between them. And then if you'd have all human communication on just 2 bands at that point.
So if we're sending wireless data signals through the earth, and it's 5.3 megahertz and it's modulated, and you said a noise canceling situation would be able to do that. Is that even possible to have that such of an intricate noise cancellation to be able to send data where you want it to?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
especially
absolutely.
with
Tesla's got like several different patents specifically on how to add complex signals and transmit through the earth, and then how to specifically decrypt them, or decode them, I guess would be the right word, in order to selectively pick out exactly which you want. And he was talking about how he could send the signal everywhere on Earth, and everybody would be able to pick it up, but nobody would be able to use it unless they had exactly the right balance of different oscillators that would perfectly phase out all of the indifferences and finally amplify it. So yeah, you got to look back quite a ways into Tesla's patents, but he explains precisely how to do it there by using 4 different oscillator frequencies or 4 different transmitter frequencies as your primary modulations, and then selectively choosing exactly the balance between them.
What's ironic is that hi-fi stereo equipment literally is the only stuff that does it and still exists. It's crazy.
Well, and the decryption of each is like having your own personalized Enigma machine.
Yeah,
I mean, good luck.
That's true.
Good luck.
Right, and it's these things are basically, the Enigma machine computers are the same style of computers that these analog systems are. You've got these multiple racks that are plugged together. And you're running one algorithm into another algorithm, and you're controlling the voltage phase to do it. So that is everything you need to control EMFs and everything. So it's interesting. If you know somebody with a Euro rack module, tell them they could be using it for weather control.
Oh yeah. So those are so boutique now that you'll never get your hands on one. Those guys.
What, Pittsburgh? Pittsburgh modular?
Are they illegal?
No, the good old Euro racks.
Oh yeah,
they're not illegal because nobody who's using them is using them for this. It's a hammer, Matthew.
Okay, yeah. It's a hammer. Can I produce that?
Yeah, you can buy one of these and
no, can I actually produce it and be able to take the funds and help fund?
Yeah, I mean that's the.
You'd have to look into specific patents. I've got 156.
This guy
citations right now, including a bunch of Tesla ones.
Yeah, this guy goes around Europe and he finds the old Soviet and West and East German military nuclear testing equipment, and he uses it to make music with or noises. But
that's cool.
He studies all of the equipment, and so if you're looking to try to figure out that stuff, he's a great resource for just because some of the stuff, the reason it makes great noises is because it's a giant vacuum tube, or it has a diode that instead of a tiny little LED, it's the size of a baseball or a softball or something like that. It's from a Soviet nuclear power plant.
I've never even heard of this guy, but I can tell right away that this is somebody I want to probably research quite a bit and see his content if ever I wanted to try and exactly see what Hutchinson was doing in his lab with all that stuff, because he was just using phase mixing and trying to generate audio frequencies by bombarding microwave frequencies together and getting that little phase difference between them, that beat frequency.
That's the interesting thing, because all this equipment has things like CV gate or whatever, which is to pull up and down the actual frequency or pull open the wave. So you're using it for sound here because you can hear it, but the same thing can be done for EMF. EMF can be done.
Okay, so basically, every audio engineer in the world is standing on the shoulders of giants. Their level 1 stuff is stuff that electrical engineers in their 3rd year are just learning about. One of the greatest guitar techs that I ever met was studying to be an electrical engineer, and one day it just clicked for him. So, I mean, audio engineers they're monsters when it comes to this sort of tech.
And you got to imagine, like 200 years ago, they just would have built organs, and so now they make electric organs.
It's a great way to physically feel out a lot of the math, because the math is, if you learn conventional physics on this stuff, it's a differential equations. So you have this basic differential equation which you can use to describe both the analog and electrical and the real world side of things, in terms of impulse momentum and what it's interacting with, like molecules and stuff. Getting into Rife's work here a little bit, by using the sound spectrum, you can sort of get this like innate feel or understanding of the waveforms. What they sound like, especially when you can combine that knowledge with an oscilloscope system, so you can actually look at the wave. So
I love that comment right there. Who isn't standing on the shoulders of giants? The only people that aren't standing on the shoulders of giants are those too arrogant and egotistical to admit that they are. That's it.
Yeah,
true.
So
exactly.
So when you come at it from a musical angle, you're taught these, and any audio engineer or anybody with Pro Tools or GarageBand is able to look at sound in this way. And so it's just a matter of backwards compatibility to teach them the electrical applications of something they're already doing.
I've used Ableton extensively to control lights, motors, oscillators, all kinds of stuff. I used Ableton to control an entire live Tesla coil show for one of the many Maker Faire events that we used to do, when we would take our freaking 13-foot spark coil and set that sucker up all over the place. Man, we traveled with that. It was just a giant freaking monster.
If you leave the square wave up on the screen, you can see how this is a square wave carrier frequency, and it's been modulated. But it looks like a couple of different frequencies that are sweeping down.
Right. So the other day, this is a total tangent, I guess, but let me see. Didgeridoo.
I'm sorry if I threw you off.
No. I'm about to go on a tangent. You were fine. So let me see if I type in didgeridoo waveform, if it'll come up. But I was listening to Aphex Twins, Didgeridoo from 1994 or something like that. Good album.
Aphex Twins is a real band. I thought that was only something on Kill Tony.
No. Actually, so Aphex Twins is a dude. I mean, don't let him tell you different. And he is from Wales or England or something like that. And Richard David James, amazing noise musician they used to hire to play the late night set so people would leave the club because the music became too discordian. But he made a didgeridoo sound with his synthesizer that took like 3 days to shape the waveform. And so the way you do it, right, is you look at that wave we were looking, excuse me, the wave that's produced. Let me go back. Earlier, it's like a square wave,
like
and
frequency. It's got that background, that bass.
That's the drone.
You pull the wave out, you shape the wave, and then you get a wave that looks something like, and we're looking at the picture, where was it?
So you're getting a modulated wave that's going through different mini harmonics.
Right, and then eventually you get something that's shaped very similarly to what a didgeridoo sound makes. And it's kind of what people find is useful is it's medicinal, and you can control whether it's at 432 hertz, and you can do all these things that are nice with certain kinds of sounds that are otherwise trapped in these like very imagine how special a didgeridoo is, right? It takes a human, it takes insects like these ants that have to eat the eucalyptus from the inside out. It takes certain kinds of trees growing in a certain part of the world. So this technology is kind of unleashing those waves, but also it's showing us the shape of it, which is something that then can be used to shape an EMF wave. And that I think is interesting because maybe there's something beyond. I mean, we're talking about psychoacoustics and how that affects our body, but maybe the electrical frequency that's produced from vibration, the sono sorry, go ahead.
I can show you this. I don't mean to cut you off. I just got excited. If you look up at NIH.gov or PubMed, look up PubMed, 432 hertz effect upon human body, and this will give you a clinical peer study that you can bring up. There it is.
That goes all the way back to the initial hemisync experiments in 46.
Yeah. So.
What are these experiments in 46? Which experiments?
You remember the binaural beats craze hit recently in like 2014, but that all comes from the original U.S. government hemisync experiments, where they actually altered brain effect through the use of binaural beats, and now we've got it as apps on our phone, and we can dial it.
I was about to say, I was like, I think it was big in this. I think it was big in the 70s because they were the people I was.
Oh, what did I say?
It's the 2014 or the 60s, I forget. But
now
that's okay. They're probably, if I go back further, it's going to say something like
hemisync is.
Yeah, he probably did some stuff in the 50s or 60s. 50s or 60s, he's already working on stuff in like 75. He is the company.
I felt like the first paper I read was late 40s. I have no clue, but here it is anyway.
Brunswick.
We did it first.
Yeah, 68. Here he is doing out-of-body experiences. So he was definitely researching it up until 78. The military gets involved.
We actually combined that with the remote viewing experiments. Was that Majestic 12? No. What were the RV experiments they did?
Remote viewing, you can actually look CE5 on the CIAD class, and you'll find
Stargate, Project Stargate.
Yep.
Was
there we go. So
Stargate.
Yeah, John.
So prior to Project Artichoke and Project Pilgrim,
78,
they were actually using the hemisync experiments on some of the RV subjects.
Yeah, and they were Ed Fouché, my buddy from Area 51, used to always talk about the binaural beats and how they were programming brain waves with the binaural splitting of the.
So I can explain a little bit of binaural beats and the binaural situation. I never mess with binaural because it is the same sequence being played right after between right and left. Now, I was explaining on the after show, I could, in theory, possibly something. If you make your brain turn right and left at the same time, then your brain's going to shut down. You're going to regurgitate. You're going to have emissions out in the lower region at the same time, but at the end of the day, it's going to shut down.
It sounds like salvia.
Well, so what happens when you make your brain turn left and right at the same time? You have this thing in the medium of your brain called the corpus callosum that is responsible for the communication between hemispheres. And usually when you do a right brain task, your corpus callosum sends a signal, hey, left brain, shut up. And so when you overload that, they both try to work and they both fail.
But whenever you do it through EMFs, then the EMFs, the electromagnetic fields, are going to travel through your brain. This is the same psychological reasoning why women can multitask better than men, because they have a larger corpus callosum. They have a larger highway between the left and right hemispheres. So they can talk on the phone and watch a baseball game, but men only watch a baseball game and then they can't hear somebody else talking. This is the same science if you look it up through psychology.
Yeah, and with the corpus callosum function, our understanding of that, specifically that, is less than a decade old.
It is.
And McGilchrist talks about this in The Master and His Emissary quite a bit, and everybody knows I can't shut up about that book. You should read it.
What is it?
The Master and His Emissary. That is Ian McGilchrist, and it's one of the best books I've ever read on brain asymmetry. And now he he has a dedicated section to the corpus callosum.
Interesting.
But he takes this all the way through the function of the brain, handedness, the corpus callosum, whether music predates language or language predates music, the shaping of Western society and the rise of left brain thought. But a lot of this you can correlate quite easily with our inundation of electromagnetic radiation in today's world.
Do you mind if we delve into it a little bit? If language was before music, because I see things as energy, and I think that energy has to be resonant before you actually resonate with it, right? So if I take a 410 or 420 tuning fork and I ring it, then this one will ring over here. So is that music or is that language? Now, I personally, I would think that language is something that's made up for communication, just like sign language, different languages, and just different things through that. So if we look at the Bible, then, and I don't mean to get on a religious rant or anything else, but even they said Lucifer was a choir director. He was a master of music. So which one came first? Was it language of communication or was it the music?
Well, when the question is posed, music, I would say, is language, because what is language? It is a shared set of points between people, whether that be sounds or clicks or, I mean, something not musical. Like if I were to say fart, that's different than me singing it. So it's all language, but whether music came before the spoken word is a question better left to those who want to talk about evolution or punctuated equilibria, or even ancient societies, because we have a time when in our recent history all music was banned except in the praise of God, and yet chanting was not.
Where was that?
Sorry?
Where was that at? That all
the 11th through the 13th century. So we talked yesterday.
You could think about it kind of like, you know, if humans were the late bloomers to come and develop or evolve on Earth, and there are plenty of other creatures already, what to us sounds like, you know, the beautiful chirping of birds and the songs of nature. It sounds like music to us. For them, it's language. So really, the only thing that we have with language is simply we're agreeing that some weird mouth sounds or tones or beats or thumps mean something specific to us. And music is absolutely a form of language too. It brings everyone together into the same exact pace and thought, and they all have this shared unique experience at concerts and just about any place you collect a bunch of people together. If they're listening to the same sound, they're going to have this incredible shared experience that's surreal and almost spiritual for some people.
Now, I'm getting ready to start doing experiments upon different beats and different musics, and this is why it interests me so much. I think I forget the name of it, where you put the sand up on the board and it's resonating. Cymatics, that's it. So in Cymatics, I've noticed that in different musics, that it'll do different shapes, but it's always in the shape of a serpent, not even to get into religious matters. But why is it doing that whenever we have an actual pattern upon a single hertz? And I'm going to be doing experiments on that. I hope you guys fully just download everything and post it on your channels too.
When thinking about cymatics too, let me point this out because I see a lot of people get this one wrong or totally just miss right past it. People have seen cymatic plates. Cymatic plates are not the same thing as cymatics. What we're really talking about with those is what happens to a specifically shaped plate. So for example, if you try to use a vibration plate that's round, or one that's square, or one with any other different geometries, the size and the shape of that plate is going to determine which frequencies do what. So if you if you take the exact same shaped plate and you just make it a tiny bit smaller, all the frequencies that work for the previous plate are not going to make any of those patterns. On the smaller one, you're going to have to slightly shift them up. And so we're looking at there as a two-dimensional representation. But when we're talking real cymatics and the terms that the ancients used to use, and all this lost cultural technology that's been completely ignored, we're talking about three-dimensional phase coherence or phase conjugation of sound waves within that space. And we have an entire world of complexity for physical three-dimensional shapes that we can make when we stop thinking 2D and stop thinking about waveforms on a scope or on a screen or something like that. And we realize that these are creating complex three-dimensional compression and expansion interactions. We can actually shape metals. There's been some experiments that
Now, you said you were going to talk about this
where they
tonight.
made parts in space in 0G by using sound waves and melting metals, and they could form them into just about any shape that they wanted, and they also could create incredible properties. In one case, the guy was able to make a very transparent metal that weighed it weighed some significant percent less, but it had 100 times the tensile strength of that same alloy made on Earth.
Now, this is the same way that you do mercury metal to create memory metal. So whenever I first started really just delving into my own experimentation upon RifeTechnology, I created a three-dimensional box of 3/4 inch polycarbonate, and I put tweeters on all sides, and I made sure that all of the tweeters worked within the same frequency that we were doing, or that I was doing. Sorry. But I would go out and take dandelions, and then I would take a mortar and pestle and break everything down into the finest dust possible. Now, of course, we still have gravitational waves. I was not able to create an exact vacuum, but I was able to create a three-dimensional shape based upon that frequency that I was playing. I thought that was possibly a little bit more true. Is that right, Jeremiah?
Yeah, you can create a three-dimensional shape. If you take a look at some of those tuned resonator boxes oftentimes used in college lab demonstrations, you'll see there's a acrylic box. Generally, it's like a 2-foot by 2-foot box. It's got 2 speakers on the right side, and then 90 degrees around to it, it's got 2 more speakers. On the back side and the left side, there are no speakers because the wave is just simply bounced off. So these form little wave traps, but they also, because the 2 channels can be phased independently of each other, we can make that sonic field rotate. And so when we levitate an object inside of one of these acoustic resonator boxes, like a foam ball or a cup or something, for example, we can move it right, left, back, and forth, up and down, but we can also make it spin because we can shift the phase between those 2 individual sound wave sources so that the compression is constantly changing its position in a rotary motion. And that allows us to build up a brand new type of phase interaction where not only are we dealing with the direct sound waves that hit each other, but we're actually accumulating rotational or angular momentum of a sound wave inside of a closed chamber, which means that we can build it up to a really high intensity and keep on phase shifting that sucker until we've had an amplitude that is sufficient for what we want to do, whether that be breaking down metals or shaping things or trying to levitate stuff.
So I'll just go ahead and state publicly, if Jeremiah ever disappears, he's in my basement and he's working with me, so there's no reason to send out a search party. Great things.
You say that, then he disappears a different way the next day. That's not
Yeah. Just like I guarantee, if I ever disappear, chances are no one's going to find me because I tend to ghost, and I will do that for extended periods of time when I get really...
never mind. I'm sorry, antisocial, or... What? It's not even antisocial, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I sort of...
Never mind.
Disappearing.
Harry Toe said, "My man."
What do you think, Andreas? You're a nanotechnician. Like,
he already knows all this stuff. He's just letting us repeat it.
I know. That's what I know.
David Breen is. If David Breen is a really nerdy, smart fellow, maybe I should find that name out. Who is he?
David Brin?
Yeah.
David Brin, the writer of The Postman?
Never heard that name.
Okay, I'll put him.
Looks like David Byrne.
David Brin wrote The Postman, and he finished the Isaac Asimov Foundation series. I did an interview with him a while ago. He is probably like the least cared about, most important in the realm of sci-fi. Science fiction writers are often there to write disaster scenarios for the CIA and for DARPA, and he writes those, and then they're supposed to make solutions to all the possible problems he thinks could happen. So he's the kind of guy who might say, what if a virus were to, like...
Are we talking about the dude from the Talking Heads, or is this someone else?
No, this is David
Yeah,
Byrne.
no, he said it was from the Talking Heads, and it's a compliment, I believe.
Oh, a different David Byrne? Wait,
I think I want to talk to this guy. You know, maybe Andreas, you should connect us.
David Burns. David
Burns.
Burns. I could take you a whole different direction with David Burns. Thank you
Are
for
we
that,
gonna?
actually.
Okay, we can do
Ted
that.
David Burns Birds. Okay, so I was thinking about David Burns earlier.
What was the guy with the women's 80s shoulder pads?
So who's David Brin, or is that just a mispronunciation?
No, David Brin. David
David
Brin is important. I just showed you who did write the ending of the Foundation, and he wrote "Killing People," and you got to know about him. But however, let's go on to David Burns for a second.
Wait, before you
I do
David
love the
Byrne-
Talking Heads. No, go ahead, Nathan.
Sorry, I'm
You went
sorry.
to URI here in Providence.
Don't be sorry.
David Brin is the master of. He should do a master class on how to break an NDA through fiction,
right?
Because it's yeah. Anyways,
Worked
yeah.
for
big
Star
fan.
Trek. Worked beautifully
Big
for
fan.
Star Trek.
Yeah, if you like Star Trek, you'll be a fan of this guy.
Yeah,
Well,
if you like Battlestar Galactica, if you want to know the truth about what's happening in the world a couple of years before it happens, like let's just say that there's a war in Russia, the book, or let's just say that, whatever. Okay. But David Burns had a good TED Talk a while ago, probably the best TED Talk I've ever seen, because I don't really like TED Talks that much, but he's great in the Talking Heads, and with that's David Bowie, has nothing to do with him. He said, hey, look at all these birds around the world. And the birds, what they'll do is they'll sing different songs, and all the songs are different. And same kind of bird, go to a different area, have a completely different accent with a completely different song that it sings. And that they sing these songs kind of be like, hey, everything's safe here, everything's safe here. But that they change their song. So even birds have kind of different languages that we don't even realize. And if you take a bird to the city, right? City birds are clearly affected by like sirens and things like that.
So
It's
there's this
shocking.
theory within psychology that the song Barbie Girl, the way it opens up and the way that the tune flows is actually from a bird. And that's the reason it caught on so big. Barbie Girl bird introduction or whatever. Yeah.
Just have a conversation with the raven if ever you have the opportunity. You'll learn a few things about birds.
I wouldn't be too surprised. Birds are freaky because birds have the ability to sing. Like, you ever seen a talking parrot, or a toucan? They the same vocal capacity as a human.
Yeah,
It's
I used to have an
horrifying.
African gray. Man, I ended up I'm sorry about this, everybody. I gave up the African gray because she kept on laying eggs on me.
It's your child.
They're not
Right.
known to do this. Like, as many eggs as she laid, it was kind of like a chicken on it.
She loved you that much, and you left her.
No, I would go take a nap, and she'd break out of her cage and crawl up my leg, and she'd just squawk in my face, and I'd wake up, and there's an egg laying on my lap.
Did you ever eat the eggs? Were they like chicken eggs?
That's love.
I thought about it. I'm not going to lie. I thought, and I just ended up sending them down the disposal.
Yeah, right. Well, I don't know. Nothing about that seems fun. I don't
I
really
don't know
wanna
about
get
you, man, but
involved
if a
with
bird brought me an egg, I'd make sure to keep that thing incubated until it hatched.
that.
Well, there was no male to fertilize the egg.
Right.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Same samsara over and over.
Yep, it's a tragedy.
Well, the other thought was the idea that using these frequencies, maybe you can pick up on, you're talking about data communication, internet, or something like that. Can you somehow use your nervous system to pick up on radio waves from further away and use this for out-of-body experiences, which for whatever reason seems like people have been saying,
Yes, you can, and I looked a lot into this. It's a U.S. patent, and there was a lot of religious things going around about this. Don't not take this as anything.
Wow, whatever
But
we're
it's the
looking at
same
on
guy
screen
on
right
this
now, I
patent.
want to see more about that. What is that from that we're looking at? He's on some kind of device that's supposed to assist in this process. Is that right? Or is this just because it looks like a med bed to me.
It looks like something from Star Wars, and I think the software they're using is Poser 7, but I'm not really sure.
It looks like the rebirth table for what's the X-Men villain? The Egyptian one.
I think I want one of those.
So it's the blackbird that says, "I'm a Barbie girl."
Out of body table from the Egyptians, or what was that?
So I forget the name. So when I did my interview with Wendy Shaw, she talked about, I forget which guy, some famous dude. He used to do the grounding bed thing. And so apparently this is a big deal. Grounding
I'm
beds.
I'm
useful
making
for that.
grounding mats for beds.
Apparently, so tell us about it, because this is supposedly useful
Okay.
for the out-of-body experience.
So
or also to protect you from it, both.
I've been seeing a lot of people in chat saying Joe Rogan. Yes. There was a guy from India. I forget the name. I'm not even going to try to mispronounce it. But he was on there, and it's overly charged overly charged frequency ionized particles that go into your body. It's kind of like electrocuting you, but it's overly charged ionized particles in your body at higher frequencies that the ground will soak up. Just like we run electricity straight into the ground, if you look up the electrical system and how they start it, they wanted to run a power line straight out, and then they wanted to run it into the ground to get that power back to the power plant. Now, you let the ground soak up all these overly charged ions inside your body, and it grounds you out. It's called grounding. So if you look at grounding, it is beneficial. It is something that is scientifically proven. And here at RifeTechnology, not here, I'm visiting my family, but at RifeTechnology, we are creating grounding mats that go onto your bed that they will strap down. I've looked up the skin resistance. I've looked up everything involved. And the material that I have is 0.003 of a negative impedance or less. And you can go 10 foot away and put an electrical meter on it, and it'll just go to zero. But not only that, but we're doing pockets to where you can throw an extra cell phone in there in case it happens.
How does this thing work? What is the electronics on this, or is it just
no really electronics? Actually, in the case of the grounding bed and just grounding out the human body, most of us that grew up in modern civilized culture never touch the ground. We walk around on rubber insulated shoes. We stand on several stories above the ground on wooden floors over carpet. We never have much contact with the ground anymore, and that's completely opposite of the way that it used to be. So our species is slowly losing, generation by generation, its connection with nature and its ability to sense what would otherwise be easily detectable coming from the Earth, because the telluric currents have pretty high potentials, and a lot of people can pick up on them, but today we just have no concept of that at all in the language. We've totally forgotten about the importance of neutralizing and balancing out charge in the human body.
Have any of you ever heard of
wait, Bernie, is this the gamer extreme version of grounding? What the heck is this?
Yeah,
That
this
is
is Dan
fantastic.
Winters.
Wow, what we're looking at.
This is Dan Winters Therify grounding units.
Oh my god, I want this so bad. I don't know what's going on.
You guys should have seen the ground we installed back in the day.
What is that?
We used to put in these massive grounding systems for all of our transmission.
Can you imagine, like, when someone
stuff?
comes over and they see your bed and you're just like, this is where the magic happens. And you're like, this is where the alchemy happens.
Okay, two things. Andreas, I just sent you something if you want to bring it up on screen, and this is how
you could have this on a clapper, so it just turns on. Okay, hold on.
When you turn it on, it plays out green.
Well, are you guys building and selling these too, or our own, or is this just you're advertising for other people, man? Because we could build and sell these if
this one's
I'm building them and I'm going to be selling them. Andreas, if you look in your Twitter, I just sent you something on how the human body works on the electrical system, the bioelectrical. There you go. So, and I want to explain this because somebody was talking about this is where the magic happens. I have narrowed down 30 hertz EMF will actually bring blood flow to an area. And as if any females know what blood flow to an area means, then it just means a little bit more sensitivity, a lot of stimulation. And I've modulated that to where I can go to a restaurant and I can turn something on. I haven't done it, but I've tested it out with other people to where if they come to my table, they would be very happy. Yeah.
Question. Is anyone familiar with ferrum phosphate?
Yes.
Is there a resonant range for ferrum phosphate?
Yeah.
If you don't mind me asking, please clue me in, because if I've never heard of this stuff, and my guess is probably most of the audience is thinking the same thing.
So ferrum phosphate, or phosphate of ferrum, iron phosphate, is one of the 12 essential cell salts discovered a couple hundred years ago by a man, and then by George Washington Carey and his co-writer, brought into a religious and holistic purview. And now ferrum phosphate greatly enhances blood flow. And now if he's found a device, I think I know the mechanism. What you're looking at is the driving Hertz range for the propagation of ferrum phosphate inside of the blood. So your product combined with this product would act like every fitness guy thinks arginine acts.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Because you want to be able to create a lot of blood flow as much as you can to be able to get a lot of oxygenation coming through. Now, you have to pair that with hydrogen oxygenated water. Like I have a Kangen machine here.
That's the delivery system for ferrum phosphate, actually.
Yep.
You have to dissolve it. You shouldn't take it in tablet form. It's one of the few cell salts that's like that.
Yeah, so you have to take it within a hydroelectric system that is hydrogen oxygen that goes through an electrolysis program, just like Kangen water, whatever you want to say it. But a lot of people, like I've looked at these machines the last couple of days, I've lost all faith in them because I can create a machine. Anyway, either way, they use a calcium. They use the calcium to create pH balance, and a lot of people don't even know about the calcium tablets you have to put into it.
Oh,
and they don't know that the company owns that molecular structure through I can look it up. It's so bad, man. But yeah, you're exactly right. So I can be able to create the blood flow, create it within people to have that delivery system of oxygen while you're working out. You can gain mass, or you can gain more density.
Yeah, so in concert, you ramp up the effects of each individual. And I believe it's not calcium phosphate they're using for that. It's calcium sulfide.
It's calcium diophosphate acid. Diophosphatic acid.
Okay, I wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole.
Dude, I wouldn't either, because the same company that owns Kangen, I believe, owns I can look at it. It just... I'm sorry. So a lot of my family owns these machines. I got one right here that's $5,000, and they say, "Oh yeah, it's got platinum plates." No, it has platinum electroplated plates.
Yeah. So, everybody's cutting corners, just like they will copper plate things instead of make copper wire anymore for your washer and dryer.
Well, if you're there with your family and at that place and you have access to these machines, what would be really cool, and I'm sure we would all appreciate it, is if you were able to pull some of those things up on screen and show us. Can we
show and tell?
Yeah, let's do show and tell.
I'm over too far. Here it is.
Look at that.
Oh yeah.
I can open this up and I can show you the plates. They are titanium plates. Yeah, it is a 7
would you?
face thing.
I'd like to see that, honestly.
I think that my aunt may kill me unless I get
$1,000. That thing is no substitute for a decent RO filter. And if you want to get really fancy, if you're making mineral water, you should be deionizing your water, and you can buy that anyway. It's a form of electrolysis.
Well, how about I just hook up a Rife machine, and I pull a bottle of water that's sold out, and we just do different tests on it. Because after I cleaned all the calcium out of this machine,
real science.
Yeah, okay. My aunt paid $5,000 for this machine.
We won't tell.
Yeah, I don't want to be hurt in the morning. So, and
that machine there we're looking at costs $5,000.
Oh yeah, the Kangen machines, they'll go for $5,000 to $9,000 to $12,000.
Go look up Kangen Platinum. If I can figure out how to switch my screen really quick, I'll show you.
They got the small.
No, I really want to know what's inside of it that justifies that kind of cost.
Well, they can alter the pH in real time, so you hit a different button and it's a different pH. So, I mean, the idea is sound, but as for effectiveness...
And she's still got the plastic on it because,
Well, yeah, when you pay $5,000 for something, you want to keep it perfect.
So, you got to go over here. It's not even a pump inside. You have to go to ion. Turn it on. And then this is strong acid water. Then you go to beauty water. You go to Kangen, 8.5, 9.0, and 9.5, right? Well, if you look inside...
Yeah, I want to know how it's alkalizing the water. I mean, is it actually dissolving a material into it, or what is it doing?
I took it apart. Back here are 7 titanium plates that go through electrolysis, and that creates the bubbles. But we all know that water is a great insulator. It's not a great conductor. And if you look right here, there is this filter, right?
I'm guessing something in there probably needs to be changed out every so often if it's mixing different materials into the water in order to add an alkaline or acidic property.
Well, look at the top above the filter.
Okay, there it is. That's how they are alkalizing it.
Yeah, I can show you guys the manual. And I think if you look this up, it tells you calcium, whatever it was that I said. And it's the calcium added to it that creates the pH balance on this. And this machine right here is the same exact production of the same water. It produces the same exact amount of pH water that you buy for $1,500. But they've marketed these people. This Kangen is called a platinum. So they say, oh yeah, this is the platinum. It has platinum plates. Well, they've electroplated platinum up on titanium plates.
Okay, so this machine using calcium tablets is the equivalent of you paying thousands of dollars for it to exactly dose you with the right amount of Tums. You can do this with
man. I couldn't have said it better. That was beautiful.
It's not Tums. It's called chalk because chalk is calcium. Yeah, it's calcium carbohydrate or
Tums is calcium carbonate.
That's Tums, man.
Yeah, and look up chalk. It's the same thing.
Same stuff.
Is Tums shaped like a teddy bear?
No, but I would actually pay for.
They should make this shape like a teddy bear and call it Teddy Chalk, and then that would be worth extra money.
So basically, what we're looking at there is a really expensive pH measuring meter with its own circulation system that somebody could probably build for like $200 or less. Nice,
it's a Tums
dude. I could do it for $20, and I could probably send somebody that's on drugs into Home Depot to buy the materials for me.
Well, obviously, I mean the platinum electroplating or solid platinum plates are going to be really where you're going to run into difficulties there. But
not really, because they're electroplated and just
right. But you have to have platinum electroplating capabilities, and it turns out it's actually a lot harder to electroplate platinum than one might think. It's nothing like doing gold or silver or any of these common metals or nickel. Platinum,
but all that platinum disappears. All that platinum disappears very quickly because how much are you electroplating? I open this up, and these are all titanium plates that are inside of it.
That's not right. Well, I mean, they're using solid platinum plates for a very good reason when they're producing the Brown's gas. And they're getting massive unity gains out of that system because it seems like they're almost converting thermal energy. Plus, electron clustering, talking about exotic vacuum objects, it's going to give you really strange and anomalous energy effects because those things can extract Brownian motion, and they would make Lord Kelvin spin in his grave.
Guys, I'm having a really good chat. Thank you.
That's a really expensive coffee machine.
Dude, this coffee machine is way more efficient, and it's by Cuisinart.
But what about what you mentioned earlier there? Hook up a Rife machine and to some water or something and do some experiments?
We can do it now if you guys want to.
If you don't mind, maybe setting up and see what Xirtus is looking at while you get ready.
Yeah,
I just have all these thoughts. This is just making my mind run wild, actually. I have a lot of thoughts.
Yeah, this is great.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's just so much you can do. There's so much you can do with radio, and being able to control the frequency. But sorry, go ahead.
See the frequencies because this is all invisible that's around us. With that, like a pocket device like that, you can just like do a scan and just see what's going on around you, and the fact that it has intelligence on all these signals, it can like identify like, oh, this is a this type of scanner going off here, or this is a this credit card readers nearby. It can read all that stuff. This is like RFID technologies. There's an RFID chip in all your credit cards now. Your bank cards, your debit card has this little chip in it, and it's got actually wire that's built into the card, which is a coil that picks up one of these signals. So when you put it near that reader that scans it, actually
that's cool.
Powers
nice animation.
Powers that chip inside your card. Yep, this is great animation.
You guys, you're familiar with the history of fractal antenna?
Yeah, all the way back to what is it? KOHN? Is that right? Some of the first fractana.
Some of the first modern day fractal antenna work. And
there's been a huge amount of fractal antenna work that brought us to metamaterials, and that's Jeremy's specialty.
And I met him in 2014, I think, at the colloquium at MIT. He came and spoke there for the cold fusion colloquium, and I never heard of the guy before, but I filmed his discussion there, and I got to actually talk to him a little bit behind the scenes. But he at the time he was under NDA with a lot of defense contracts for like the questions that I was asking him, so he was not really able to talk a lot about it. But
antenna, that's the name I was thinking of. KOSH, I think. But yeah, I had a buddy that was way back in the day. I think it was like 16 or so years ago. He built a series of what he called snowflake antennas. And if you've heard of a Yagi beam antenna, where it takes a series of tuned resonant dipoles and systematically shrinks them down by a certain percentage in order to focus the beam because it's a refractive index modifying system. Well, he took those snowflakes and made a tuned Yagi beam that he was able to get insane decibel gain on. I mean, that thing was, he could freaking get signals from like, geez, I don't know, a couple thousand miles away with a minimal amplifier and transmit them just as far with less than a watt. So it was nuts.
That's incredible.
Oh, what another great animation. Jeez, that's beautiful.
If you do the Fourier series like analysis on one of these types of fractal antennas, you just get, it just hits all those nodal points perfectly.
That's the best Yagi animation I've ever seen. That was just gorgeous. So, I actually want the link to that one. Man, that was great. What'd you type?
I'll put it in the private chat.
Yeah, would you? I'd appreciate that. I intended to use that.
With the fractal antennas, if anybody wants to know where to actually find me, I operate out of stolenhistory.net and stolenmedicine.net. It's mostly historical.
Jeez, that's so nice.
The idea of the fractal antenna actually has a large following in the history community because they believe the same as with pyramids, that archaeologically and architecturally fractal antenna principles have been around for thousands of years.
They sure have. Even a lot of those old ancient stone layouts and sites, and there's this whole thing.
Star citadels and star cities.
But yeah, you place any physical masses in a certain geometry against each other, and they do, even though we wouldn't think about the gravitational interaction of just having some mass sitting upright and arranged in a certain geometric pattern, but they actually do interact with each other, and they slightly shift the properties of that local space in a way that can condition certain waveforms to travel through them much more easily.
Exactly. There's even studies in the 60s that talk about primordial type particle accelerators and their principles in the Avebury stones and stone circles. So, I mean, we have the same principles, and just like an audio engineer may not know the technical electrical engineer's math and datum, it seems that these people were able to intuit things that we're only just coming to again.
Well, on the opposite side of that, I'll also say an electrical engineer who doesn't understand the principles of sound or audio is a crap engineer.
Or he's just never been exposed, but I do agree.
But you can't help but acknowledge it. I mean, I know, avoiding all the woo, you can't help but notice this Graham Hancock thing. These ancient people that have these towers, they're working with bells, they're focusing on psychoacoustics, on the power of physics that are affected by volcanoes, and they apparently have these ancient temples that are from a civilization that is no longer there. So
exactly, clap your hands next to any step pyramid. Just clap your hands near any step pyramid, and you're going to hear that thing shift its frequency.
I thought that was like if you don't think that the Tartarians exist, you have to clap your hands if you say it, or else
clap your hands,
or else if Tartarian dies. Yeah.
Said that word. I have to bring up a short clip out of from Tesla Tech, Steve's place, played earlier tonight. Where,
oh my God, man! Do what you must do. What must be done.
Oh yeah, okay.
Tesla architecture being talked on Steve's place, Tesla Tech tonight.
Oh, real sweet.
Yeah, back in 2019, we went over these onion domes.
They're going over all sorts of the sacred geometry patterns, the fractal antennas somewhere up in here. Quite the extensive
I think it's not just woo. I think it's really important historical evidence for technology that we're trying to rediscover or find that exists either in the past or the future. So the more that we can find it. Oh, go back. Are you going to show it? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Just doing a little highlight of it. So
yeah,
just show its existence.
It's a shout out too. Seriously underviewed over there with the stuff that they're putting out from Tesla Tech. All the archival, old Tesla Tech interviews, guys. It was a good place for a lot of these people to come forward with a lot of their research into some of this stuff. There's some.
Cool. If you go back to that plane,
right?
Okay.
Hey, Boyd Yin Yang is in the chat today. I have an experiment that I wanted to show him. He found something most fascinating. That was that thing I brought up on your show the other day, Bernie, with those two magnets inside the test tubes. And now that I have that set up, I mean, this audience hasn't seen it. Your little audience did. Give me like 2 minutes for the sake of Void. And by the way, dude, we got to get in contact, man. We got to talk. I want to talk to you about non-communication and non-localities. So we've got to hook up.
So you said for the sake of Void. So for the people that do not know, this plane that he just brought up was actually found in the pyramids. And people say that they were produced after birds. But it looks like a plane.
That's a messed up bird. I feel really bad for that bird. That bird has run into trees.
Of those too. They were found all over the place. Some of them have open cockpits and little seats inside of them. Some of these little things that were found, so they don't all.
What bird has a beak like
really
that?
Do look like planes.
That's the pit bull of birds. That's like the animal and the person. You don't want a beak like that if you're a bird. I don't think it's a bird.
I want that bird.
So to bring it back, what do you guys think about using this technology combined with architectural fractal antenna?
Definitely, I think it was a key source to the energy prior to what we're using today.
In old Earth atmosphere used to have a vastly electrified profile compared to today. I mean, we're living in dead years, even compared to 500 years ago.
And just the very structure they made, the materials they used were way more conductive than what we're using today, and that was definitely a factor.
Oh, yeah.
I think that we have enough intelligence here and people with experience that we could be able to be funded and to be able to bring technology like this back to the forefront of the community, just as long as we had people to back us up. So as a business owner, I could see us all supporting each other and to be able to advertise each other for free, because I spend, you guys have no idea how much I spend on advertisement. But just by the minds alone and the people that's in the chat, if you guys share this out on your Twitter, if you guys share this out on your Facebook and bring people in, maybe they're interested.
Green tethered UAVs for EMF-aware cellular networks. Well, that's nice. A prevalent theory circulating amongst the non-scientific community is that the intensive deployment of base stations over the territory significantly increases the level of EMF. To alleviate the concern in this work, we propose a network architecture that introduces tethered unmanned aerial vehicles carrying green antennas to minimize the EMF exposure while guaranteeing a high data rate for users.
So they're trying to create data waves through the positively charged ions that come from the sun.
Networks of these UAVs. This is like where they're switching to near field communications for so that there's not so much EMF background noise created by the communication systems for these UAVs.
Right, and then they can shut it off too, because then you can shut off a whole block or a whole community. You just shut off the UAVs in that area.
So the near field communication is you have just a simple chip that's programmed. It has a resonant signature upon an electric, and then whenever you apply something like the back of your phone to it, then that's going to go through a Qi coil. It's like wireless charging, and it's going to excite that chip to send that data back to you, and that's how you read it.
This reminds me of Solarin.
Peak data. I think this is something that, we need to look into more. I always think about the Schumann resonance and how it spikes when there's something going on with humans. But wouldn't that also make sense if it's that something's going on with our communication networks and that we're busying up our bandwidth or something?
Well, these are also wide bandwidth systems because they're frequency hopping, modulated systems for security purposes, to run a lot of UAVs and drones, and especially military ones. I assume this is like it sounds like a military application technology. And so
oh boy, this is going to be fun. I think I just found a map worth looking at. Oh, but it's blurry. Why would you guys make a blurry map?
This is a map of where all of the different megahertz and all the signal ranges are dedicated to. That's what that map is. And so it'll tell you which part is military, which part is law enforcement, which part
changes.
Radio.
That changes every 3 or 4 years, actually.
Right, and they get rid of old ones and UHF. So the
well, they buy them up and they get them on a commissionary basis. So you have paramilitary, military, local law enforcement, and then corporation. And then public use gets relegated last.
So this is published every year by the FCC, and here's the fcc.gov link where you can actually go and download it.
So who owns these airwaves that are selling them, and none of the people that have the airwaves above them are benefiting from it?
What's the law with that? So the FCC, what's their deal? Like, what's the deal with cars and roads? At one point we all own the roads, right? And didn't they transfer the property of the roads to the Department of Motor Vehicles? So I feel like
in Eisenhower's era.
I feel like the FCC kind of owns the radio, but I could be wrong. Regulates communications. Who owns the radio?
What is it? The FAAC?
I think
who really owns the airwaves? Oh no, it's just going to be a propaganda article.
Avatar owns the airwaves.
Basically, well, the FCC is
a
regulating body for this, area of space, or whatever you want to call it. So the FCC is the Federal Communications Commission. So all these communications run through the FCC, and of course, it's connected very closely with the NSA, because the NSA literally takes all those signals and they just listen in on all of them and dump it to these massive servers in Utah, where they then have teams of computer scientists and other technicians working on how to crunch that data to actually find usable intelligence out of it. So they're like, well, what should we be listening to, and what is noise? And
we need to figure this out, because it's like, obviously there's a point in history when people could just have their own radio stations, and we have a term for people that do that now. They're called pirate radio stations.
Yep.
So clearly they're the waves. It's kind of the waves of the sea of the broadcast, and we need to figure out who thinks that they own this anarchy, or how it works, that they have control over their jurisdiction over it. That they, because they were on taking people's equipment for using it, right?
Oh, yeah. So again, remember, just transmit through the ground, and you get to avoid all that through ground communications. Can't stop that. You can bury the whole damn thing underground and transmit directly
I think
with
they
the coil and
can.
resonator, everything under the ground.
I think they can because, for example, here in Virginia, there's people that still own mineral rights. And the mineral rights are the minerals below your land. And you have to pay a lot of money to do that. And over the years, like in California, you never owned mineral rights. But over the years, you can sell the land, but you don't sell the mineral rights. The mineral rights go to the state. And that's all the coal that's up under there. That's all this stuff. So my grandmother owns many acres of land, and they're getting ready to coal mine up under it. And they'll never tell her if they coal mine up underneath her house. But she owns the mineral rights, so therefore those minerals are hers. And this is the same with frequency. It's still above her head. The only thing that people are allotted to and allowed to have is what they walk within today, because the government has taken over every other control above and below.
Well, if she could ever prove that conclusively there is a mine underneath her house and that it was profited only for that little area, exactly how much acreage she has going straight down, she could theoretically sue and get her value out of whatever that section of the mining was.
Yes, and I have a Google Earth map that has all the mines and how much they've mined out of it, but it takes so much to be able to take a lawyer and go back and prove all this and go through court, especially in this area. My brother, I don't want to get into that, but it just takes a lot of resources to be able to do that. And people that don't have the resources are not allowed to access any of that data.
Nice comment, Daniel. Mommy, should I trust strangers offering good sound advice? Well, take sound advice from anybody who will give it, whether that be sound as in coherent or sound as in acoustic or sound as in electromagnetic. Always listen to anyone talking sound.
Test all things, hold fast to what is true.
So this is whole thing called ham radio too, and you can get your ham operator's license, and there's a bunch of people that still talk and communicate on this ham radio. I think it's a different band than the CB radio crew, which is like there's CB radio, which is commercial band radio. That's like the truckers use that to talk via those shortwave. Yeah, but the ham radio is that's long. That's far field long wave broadcast stuff, and you have to get like some license to be able to do that. And there's like
the license isn't even that bad. They took away the testing up on Morse code, and what it does, it kind of works like 5G, to where it goes from an antenna and it bounces off another person's signal.
You mean like
Are you familiar with the ultra high frequency, like 1930s, I think, and they were talking about using ultra high frequencies to reach coils that could be buried, I think they said 5 feet, and even through snow, they could trigger these things in the ground to operate like a perpetual motor through these ultra high radio frequencies.
Sounds awesome. If you're talking burying coils, you're talking our language.
Yeah, so I have to find the book. I just went to go look for it, and it's from like the Corps of Engineers, and they're writing. It's like all the scientists got together and they're writing it to the people, and also to Congress at the time, and it's all of this crazy stuff. And it reminded me of, I don't know, there's a movie where they have to dig holes. Is that holes? Anyway, it's talking about the dimensions, and it was like the beginning is like they're going to reveal all the truths to the people about this technology. And it just kind of blew my mind. And from then I was always thinking about sound and radio frequency and how that could be used to possibly operate or perpetuate continuous motion.
You know, it could, and it really could, because after you eject enough energy into the ground through EMFs, then it could create, it's not perpetual motion because it violates the first law of thermodynamics. But it also reminds me of this thing that whenever you use a radar or a metal detector, right? Now, the metal detectors only go 10 to 12 inches into the ground on a standard. why are we not shooting them into the ground over a longer period?
Well, we are. That's called ground penetrating radar, and that's exactly what it does.
Yeah, but who has access to that?
So
anybody that wants to rent a piece of equipment, you can rent one for a day as a civilian.
Pirate radio stations do, and that's the other thing. So you're going to find that there's lots more people than you realize that have ham radios that could be adapted to be doing this, but that you're not going to hear about them. And the FCC is going after and targeting people because they can pick up where the signals are coming from. The only ones you're hearing about are the ones that have fans, which are the music radio stations. But those are the ones that in this last year, it looks like they've really gone to town, shutting down the pirate radio stations in the AM and the FM bands. So they're really coming down on people using radio frequencies that they are charting. They're charting the seas.
Okay, now who owns the FM bands?
I mean, this is a great question. As far as I can tell, and I need to look into this more, I probably have to write like a Dolly.
Well, in the United States, the FCC pretty much owns the bands, and you pay
right.
You pay your right if you want to transmit on one of the ones that.
Technically, though, do they? That's my question. Like, I haven't seen the law that shows me the FCC owns the band.
Owns a band, okay?
Well, that's a great. So what the heck?
They own the airwaves,
but they will come after you.
And they sell them. They sell airwaves, and they sell them, and they benefit from it, just like cell phone signals.
And then you lease it, or do you get to own it if you pay enough up front, or is it like
you just
lease it?
No,
there was a movie. There was a movie about who was that girl who played in Herbie the Love Bug, the new one.
Lohan.
You pay the FCC mafia your fees, and that will prevent them from coming after you.
This is really interesting to me because how is it possible? And just show me the law that makes it possible for the FCC, this supposedly independent organization, to it says which an independent regulatory agency. Independent is its own. In other words, it's independent of the United States government, created by the United States government.
That sounds kind of like the National Treasury, doesn't it?
So how did we let this happen, and what do we have to do to remind them that that's not legal to take?
Okay, so
it is legal
if
because
this is
they have the force behind it.
If this is an independent agency, then you should be able to go to SAM.gov, System for Award Management.gov, SAM.gov, and you should be able to look up their cage code and find all the contact information. You should be able to see their point of contact, everything.
Yeah, we got to remember that laws are enforced by power and by threat.
Yep.
The only thing that's legal is what we all agree upon as a society to not stand up against.
If you look right here, it says FPDS.gov. That means Federal Procurement Database System.gov. You can see every contract the government has ever issued, how much they paid the people, and what it was for.
Just show me in nature anytime a lion got sued for chasing a gazelle under contract.
Well, I can show you a guy that got bodied for building a hydrogen engine.
Right.
And I think that's a problem.
Yeah, Void, I got to talk with you because I'm having some trouble understanding the non-communicative effects that you often go on with, and I would really like to grasp it more, but the only way I'm going to get that is if I have a chance to actually talk with you. I don't know if we can have a call sometime, but I would really like to get you on the phone or on the Zoom call or on something and have that conversation to comprehend what it is that you're teaching.
Yeah, so this UHF band that she was talking about, that's ultra high frequency. So when you're talking about energy content of electromagnetic radiation, E equals HF, which means that the energy is proportional to the frequency. So if you want to get energy out of electromagnetic radio waves, then the UHF or the higher frequency side of the spectrum is of course going to give you more energy. Maybe usable energy, you may be able to get something out of that. It's almost where you get to terahertz frequency. That's infrared.
I was gonna make the joke because it goes UHF is ultra high frequency, then it goes super high frequency, then like extremely high frequency, then the hell frequency. No, yeah,
right. No, but actually, why is infrared where they claim that they see demons? Demons are painted in red, and ultraviolet, the opposite spectrum, is apparently where auras are.
But there is something to the idea. Sorry, Jeremy.
They own all of it. Look at it; it's all already dedicated to somebody.
Okay, THF stands for tremendously high frequency.
No, I think you're right.
Is that actually a thing?
Yeah, it's a thing.
That's hilarious. My gosh. Is it like horrendously high? Or is that the final one?
Oh, you'll just die. You will never know.
Stand in the sunlight, you're getting hit with THF.
Yeah, that's the kind of stuff we were doing on the Sesura.
High frequency, very high frequency, ultra high frequency, super high frequency, right? Is that right? Super low super high frequency.
WTF?
And then WTF isn't really there. That's just a joke. That's
nice.
That's how we all feel. That's how we all should feel.
Oh, that's my favorite, man. Tremendously high frequency. I've never even heard the term THF.
THF is like the hell. Yeah.
I was thinking
frequency is this?
Brett,
you don't even get to say the hell.
Yes.
Yeah, it's not actually terahertz though. That's the thing.
It is. Gets into three.
Oh, it does. It does get into 3 terahertz. Okay, sorry.
It's terahertz.
I thought it got right up to a tera, but I get to 3 terahertz. Yeah, that's pretty good. I think we need another one, which should be WTF, which is like what terahertz?
Or just ridiculously high. Is that
you guys remember ludicrous speed?
And
Spaceballs, right? So we go from tremendously high frequency to, let's say RHF, ridiculously high frequency to.
That's not real.
What's after that?
No, it is, and that's terahertz radiation. And Jeremy, you were about to say.
Oh my god, I was joking.
Yeah, the WTF should be the terahertz gap because like this. Why is there a gap in the electromagnetic spectrum?
Oh my god!
Because it's fun. Don't you want to be able to go through walls and see
is
inside of people's
the one they're using?
Well,
can we claim this?
Various terahertz, right? Like,
can we claim this?
Can
we modulate a carrier signal with the WTF and claim that?
Yes.
So you guys want to know why these band or these completely unexplored terahertz gap frequencies are so freaking important? They are representative of the velocity c propagation of an electromagnetic signal through a material at the distance or exact spacing between the atoms of that material, which means that you can physically vibrate a material's atomic structure and break apart its coherent bonds in the terahertz gap that we currently have not developed technology to use.
So you're talking about teleportation, just like on Star Trek whenever they'd send somebody from the ship down to the Earth.
But also Mr. Universe blowing people apart.
But also maybe just floating in one spot instead of falling.
Also floating.
You know, use for nice things. I'm a big fan of nice things. But
by terahertz gap, it looks like NeuroStream is asking to, what does that mean? It means there's a major gap in the technology that we've currently developed and that's accessible to anybody, even including high-end labs, where we simply do not have the ability to generate certain frequencies in the terahertz spectrum.
Or detectors. You can't see it. Not only can you not generate, you can't detect either.
Right. Well, if you build a detector, then you've automatically got a mechanism by which a semiconductor or an assembly of physical materials can be reversed in that process to produce it. So if you have the ability to hear it, then you also have the ability to make it.
So Jeremiah, in theory, how would you go about your first steps of building an antenna to project this gap?
To building a what? To project this gap?
To be able to project this terahertz gap.
You mean how will be generated at high enough energy levels to be useful? Like how you get this gap filled? Okay, so no semiconductor is going to directly operate in an on-off switch mechanism in the way we conventionally use the electronics. So this is not going to work like a MOSFET or a transistor or anything like a processor. In order to generate terahertz frequencies, what we need is something with a material property where we can input a low frequency or input a continuous direct value, and that material itself will atomically, because like I said, this is the spacing between atoms, will atomically vibrate and pump out the terahertz frequency that we want. And then we can use things like temperature, compression, and phase angle in order to shift the frequency of the terahertz output so that we can have precision at just about any frequency that we need. Consider like masers, for example. Masers are not talked about very often, but we've got plenty of stuff in photonics for lasers. Masers are a much lower frequency type of laser that generates microwaves instead in the non-visible band instead of generating visible photons. And so masers can go down into and help fill the terahertz gap. And plasma masers specifically can be tuned under the pressure and temperature of the chamber to produce a wide-ranging scope of terahertz frequencies.
So,
oh my god! So I have to just say really quickly. So erbium doped laser in photonics. So if you have an EDF, OISO, WDM, erbium doped fiber laser model, right? So using fiber to transceive the signal. This article suggests, we were talking about what was the edge of the ultra frequency, whatever, the tremendously high frequcy, the hell
3
frequency.
terahertz.
3. So this is 6.5. So I think this is well in the range of WTF. And it's so you're using a fiber coupled transceiver head for terahertz time domain reflection measurements, monolithically integrated transceiver chip based on iron doped gallium, arsenic, et cetera. So you could definitely imagine this technology is being used right now. I mean,
so this goes from 1 to 10 terahertz, and it does not go past, on that diagram you showed before, past 3 terahertz.
Yeah. So what methods I would suggest also using, similar to what Jeremiah was describing, is you have to use frequency multiplier reflectors or waveguide multiplier reflectors, such as a Bragg reflector or other type, right? And if you get a frequency that's just below the gap that you say you can't reach this gap, if you start with a frequency that's just below that, and then you shine it through one of these waveguide materials that can act as a frequency multiplier, you could maybe produce an output frequency that's in that range by using one of these waveguide multiplier.
Is this similar to shining a light into a prism and having it reflect off into different colors?
It really is, except for in this case, you're not having it split or spread. You're just simply receiving the difference in phase conjugation between the separation of the layers. You remember the Linda Moulton Howe samples and how those things were basically stacked metals and stacked oxides.
These are going to be the lines
doing the same thing.
Colors.
Yeah, this is the same. That's the same thing. Was like what was shown in that diagram is what you'd get through a stacked layers of different materials of different refractive index, and what that effectively does is it reflects it's a great to look up that Quetzalcoatl pyramid study that was done on the acoustics of the Chichen Itza.
If you find it, send me the link. I'll put it up.
That's just what we were talking about earlier. The step pyramids will generate a series of these phases.
Is the chirp, right? So you clap at the base of this ancient pyramid, and the signal that it returns acoustically is a chirp. And there's a whole paper that was written that decodes that, that solves it, and basically, here it is. I got it.
Yeah, this is the inverse principle of the creation of amphitheaters.
And the idea is that this incident clap is a signal, a single waveform, and as it reflects off the wave fronts of all the steps.
Can you post that in the private chat so I can pull it up on the screen?
Jeremy, actually, if you could pull up video with audio so people can actually hear the sound of that thing zip up. It's really incredible, because normally what we do when we mix any waves together, if we're just mixing them signal wise and not in 3-dimensional space, what we end up with is always a lower frequency than what we started with. We can't end up with a higher frequency by simply mixing waves together, unless of course we have something for which they can interact in. And in this case, acoustically, it's a 3-dimensional phenomena, so we can actually step a frequency up higher than what it started with by allowing that frequency to not immediately reflect, but build up first before it comes back out.
And if you could regulate that in between only going up as low as 60 hertz and as high as 10,000 hertz, then people can hear it through their speakers.
Yeah, just consider the actual wavelength of a super low frequency like that, because if you're trying to get any kind of decent Q factor, we're talking a pretty large oscillator or a pretty large wave reflection chamber, practically standing between mountains, basically.
All right, we're going to listen to this.
This is a simple echo. Actually, it's very simple to explain. When you clap in front of a pyramid, of a slope, the sound will go to the top. in this case, a pyramid. You know? And if it's there a cavity or a temple, like in this case, the echo will come back to you. If you clap in front of an Egyptian pyramid, nothing happens because the sound goes away. But here, the sound comes back. Why it sounds like a bird? Don't ask me that.
That is amazing. And the science behind
Really
it is even wilder.
Experts from different countries, experts in acoustics, have come here to study, to try to know how this is possible. They leave the country just like they.
It works all four sides the same.
So used to be, now only two. Yeah, the north and the west. See?
Jeremy, when you connected that with a Bragg reflector, that was just genius. As soon as you connected the step pyramid and that acoustic phenomena with what we know in photonics, I just thought that was freaking awesome.
If you look into that same pyramid, that was in Mexico, and they actually have the photon resonance to where on the solstice, every solstice, it has a serpent that's crawling down the stairs in the shadow.
Yeah, we know. Yeah, I've seen that one before too.
I just want to see thousands of people at the base of that clapping.
On solstice.
A big loudspeaker.
That's, oh man.
I totally go there with a pulse tone generator and try to tune that sucker in. Actually, there was a video on, what was it? Graham Hancock went out on tour with an expert on it, and they went inside one of, I think it was the Red Pyramid and also the Great Pyramid on the Giza Plateau. Yeah. And found toning frequencies. So what those walls will do inside the Red Pyramid, inside the Great Pyramid, there are other types of Bragg reflectors that are tilted at an angle. And if you sing one single low frequency tone in that chamber and let it reflect back, you just sing it for a couple of seconds, you'll get a much louder amplification of an entire choir singing back to you. And so they toned it out with a little speaker and a keyboard, and found exactly where it resonates at and released that data. But it was just the inside of those resonant chambers and how they work, just to be able to stand inside of one is freaking incredible because of its frequency shift and what it can do to the phase and the angle of each of those wavefronts.
Someone said that this is the exact opposite of an amphitheater.
Yeah, an amphitheater basically has that shape where it directs from what is in the center outwards, and in this case, it directs from whatever is on the outside back to it. So it's quite the difference of the amphitheater.
They talk about the amphitheater. Sorry, Brittany, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
They talk about the amphitheaters for stage plays and being able to speak and whisper. And we also have horn and waveguide structures like Ochakif and other places where a ruler could speak to an entire populace without raising his voice.
Right, like the Hypogeum in Malta and the underground complex there.
Yeah, and you can find these waveguide structures all over the world. I think it was early 2020 when we made our first catalog of them, me and Michael, the 13th Monkey. And there's thousands. It's not just a few.
So I've had the chance to do some pretty interesting stuff inside of amphitheaters, as I did quite a bit of work in when I was back when I was a DJ and a sound design engineer. I used to go inside these buildings and set up the sound systems so we could phase and balance out all the acoustics and control where we wanted cancellation, where we wanted constructive interference, so everybody in the audience would hear good quality sound. But I took that opportunity with massive J subs and huge amounts of power to tone these buildings, and just for a couple of seconds I would crank up the amp because I normally test like 1% of its max output just to figure out where all these nodes are, but I'd crank it up exactly at the right resonant frequency of the building and the fucking ground would shake. Everything would shake. The whole building would shake.
Dude, I was about to say, have you ever seen Pink Floyd in Pompeii? Like, it's the best, really. But yeah, note to self, do a noise show at the Theater of Epidaurus. I've always wanted to do that, though. That's not even a new bucket list. But look at this. All these speaker systems. Pink Floyd set up like this crazy show And
merging new sound and acoustics with the ancient engineering of the theory of epidurus, man, it's just amazing what they were able to figure out and do with technology back then.
Absolutely.
Well, so an amphitheater is set up mathematically
an ancient
to be able to create the best sound, and it's tuned to everybody. I'm really curious what a white noise would sound like inside an amphitheater.
White noise is actually what we use.
Well, then you better listen to Pink. You better listen to Pink Floyd. And you better listen to Pink Floyd and Pompeii, because Jimmy Page just sits there on the floor. No, not Jimmy Page. I'm sorry, but guitarist from Pink Floyd. Someone remind me. Not Sid Barrett. I forget now. Somebody tell me. He's on the floor.
Robert Plant.
Dave Gilmour.
Is it Gilmour or Plant? I give up.
Plant is Zeppelin.
It's totally David Gilmour. And
boy's on the floor
Totally
without
out.
any shoes. He's super grounded. He's super grounded. Oh my god, yeah. He's super grounded, and yeah, Gilmour is lying on the floor, and he's got his guitar, and he's just like Jimi Hendrix, like feeling the white noise reverberating from the microphone, picking up the air in the amphitheater, and like making a feedback loop. And they've tuned it to 432. It's just like everything about it is amazing.
Okay, can we get an overhead view of the amphitheater and look at ionization within the air and kind of compare that to EMFs and the antenna that you have to be able to...
And you can also see the episode of Young Indiana Jones. I think it's like the 4th one where they do the whole like in the theater, because like, you know, he's not seen his dad in a while, so they go to the theater.
That is a beautiful render. That's fantastic.
It's great.
And we actually, have you guys ever seen the acoustic tests they used to do in the cathedrals? When they would find, so the history of our modern day understanding of acoustic properties comes from the early study of cathedrals and their resonant pitch, where you would go, you would crank up the gain on a mic and stick it in this empty cathedral, and you would record a sound, and I believe it was a 10-second clip, and then you would play that clip back and record that sound. And when you get to the 6th or 7th iteration of layering this, playing the layered clip, you would get a distinctive note, a single pitch. And they found that, you know, several cathedrals were tuned to a middle A. And this is how we found out how structures were built with a specific resonating note. And there's no variance. There's no in-between notes. It's really strange, the uniformity that you find in these structures.
Well, it's true in a half sense. There are no in-between notes, but there are multiple harmonics on which those same structures will resonate. And
yes, certainly. I just mean it wasn't like you'd find them tuned to A, and then you'd find 5 that are tuned to A sharp. It was
it's not going to be
A
it's going to be dead
or
on
G.
and exactly
Dead on.
Kind of like a Rife machine on a major scale, though, because a lot of that was for different types of healing, I would think, and for longevity. And possibly if there was water or fountains around it, they were doing that to vibrate the water and run it through different things too, I think, is what we were finding, or what I guess we speculated. And they would have organs that were built like literally into caves, and people would just sit there, and it wasn't for, worship.
Void is offering to come on the live stream. Sorry, go on. But Void is offering to come on the live stream. Can somebody get him a link? Does anybody have the ability to get him a stream?
For who?
Void is Yin Yang is offering to come on live and talk about if you want the non-communicative time frequency music secret. I can go on live stream. Can we get him on?
What's the email?
Yeah. Favorite subject.
I'm kind of wondering, like, people that grew up in the era that had a amphitheater tuned to a certain resonance, that after they changed the amphitheater, that culture actually fell.
Also, Gerald,
we can blame the fall of civilization on what frequency we chose or the resonance of that, but it seems like there's a lot of other, factors at play.
If Gerald, I forget if you wanted to share something tonight. We definitely want to see that if you have anything, but don't feel forced if you're not ready.
Oh, Bernie was just asking me about that little ferrite core that I took out of an old radio and was producing voltage on. So I set up a little. It's a nothing experiment. You don't have to worry about that. But if you'd like me to show it, I can.
I'd love to see it. Yeah.
Which one?
I'm also
I want to see this pretty man's face. Look at Nathan here. Great. Thank you. Thanks, Gerald.
I'm also playing with some old vacuum tubes. That's going to be the next experiment. So
that crazy mercury tube you've got is really something else.
Yeah, I'm building something interesting. Let's just say. If you actually give me a minute, I have to switch cameras and set it up. So,
okay. Matthew, were you gonna do a water demonstration at all still, or was that for next time?
So the water demonstration, I'm going to have to set it up for next time.
Yeah, because you're at your grandma's place right now visiting.
Yeah, I'm really interested in this mercury tube because one thing I've been looking at on Tesla Coil is switching over the electrical switch over to mercury.
He should show his mercury tube. And by the way, Bernie, please kill Bert and Ernie Cam because we are maxed out in the room. No one else can get in, so we've got to get rid of something.
God, you guys are gonna keep.
I can go too. I can just.
Bye, Bert and Ernie puppet. They're gone.
I can just.
All right, now there's space for Void or for my other camera, depending on which one comes first.
If we get any bigger, you know what we're gonna have to do with Chucks? We're gonna have to go back to using Zoom. Zoom takes
both
50
of those
people,
things.
But it's just
so I'm gonna leave, and I want Jeremiah to get his camera up ASAP. If you got two more.
No, Jeremiah's here, but someone else. Is there two people?
But he's got a second camera.
Yeah, I can leave.
Well, I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna actually wait before I set up the cam. If we can get Void on, because that experiment was the one that
I can also be in the waiting room and mod the room.
I'm gonna go. But this was awesome.
No, we're fine now without Bert and Ernie in there. I think we have the space.
Yeah.
Well. Yeah, and there's not been anybody trying. We haven't gotten a notification anybody's trying to come in yet.
We don't need anybody to leave. I mean, we just got.
I got rid of Bert and Ernie, so we got one more room, and then if
so stick around.
I miss Bert and Ernie. I'm sorry I didn't leave with him.
If Julia is gone, though, we'll just make sure you guys know to go to juliacommon.com.
Did she leave?
I don't know. I can't see her on the screen. But if you go to juliacommon.com, you can get more of her research. And also, she does live viewing, zodiac, horoscope charts, and events. And you can find out more going to the Biomed Expo.
This is going to be it for me too, guys.
Yeah, we're 2 hours deep. I know it's a long, so if you guys are having to. But I still want to see the experiment.
This has been a lot of fun.
Nathan, we'll do it again. Thank you for being here. That's awesome.
Indeed.
There was some people in the chat asking where Nathan can be found. It was at
stolenhistory.net.
Stolenhistory.net.
Please also put that in the private chat if you would.
Oh, certainly.
Because I mean, all these links, these great links that are being posted, the media that I really should be checking out, are lost in that huge, massive chat from 3 channels.
It's really difficult to set this up. I apologize. So let me just give you a quick show of the setup. What I have here is just a very tiny coil, 22 wraps. It's geometrical form, but it doesn't look like it because it's so small. And over here, you can see the ferrite core that I built. There's 2 pieces to it, 2 halves. Each side's wound 120 winds. And as you can see here, this is the ferrite core that I pulled out of an old radio. Now I'll go back to the meters. And I will turn it up. And as you can see, I'm getting 44 volts, 43, 44.
Yeah, so right now we're pumping in about 12 volts at a few hundred milliamps, maybe not even a few hundred milliamps. That transistor never gets hot, really.
And I'm also lighting, if you can see that over there, a neon as well. So the neon represents 90 volts. The power supply is 12 volts, 1 amp, which I'm not using all the capability of. This meter over here is for the radio ferrite core. Let's see if it'll pick anything up. I'll just slide it in there. Not much.
That's weird. It's not getting the voltage now. That is strange.
I think it's because I'm powering the neon, so the ferrite core isn't producing what it was before. Prior to this, it was producing 42 volts. So that's my demonstration. Simple, solid state, just voltage. I'll show some lighting and everything going on in the next live.
Can you ground out that neon and see what we jump up to?
That's a great idea. Can you?
Good idea. Let's see. Any change? I'm not seeing it. And this is grounded to the water pipe that goes into the ground right beside me. So.
Oh, we just saw a change on the left. I don't know how much. I just saw it change. Try to switch to milliamps for that neon circuit and then ground it out.
Yeah, I'm sure you don't have too much power for that. It will be fine. Your meter should handle it, no problem. Oh, you know, he doesn't have a milliamps range, I don't think, does he? Do you have a milliamps range on those guys?
On these? I think I do. I have to put my glasses on. Wow, I must be old.
Yeah, he wants to see the one with the ferrite radio rod.
Well, I mean, you can always get a Rife machine and adjust the rods and cones in your eyes to where you don't have to have a set of glasses.
Wait, you can adjust the rods and cones in your eyes with a Rife machine?
Allegedly.
So the radio one says 4.55 milliamps.
And now what we want to see is what the difference between it being grounded and not grounded is.
Oh, fair enough.
Does it make a difference? And you need to go pre-rectifier, not post-rectifier, if you have a rectifier on it.
No, I don't have a rectifier on it. You know what the neon is being lit by? It's being lit by my secondary. So let me give you the full setup. What I'm running is a 12-volt 1-amp wall plug, and I'm pulsing it with 880 hertz square wave, 50% duty cycle, and the neon is being lit by a polypropylene capacitor of 600 volts, which is attached to the neon. And that's my secondary from the coil that I'm pulsing.
Do you have the ability to switch from square wave to pure sine?
I do.
Yeah, that transistor in Class A amplification is not going to give those kinds of voltages, though.
Well, maybe I don't.
The transistor won't like it. Not with the way that you're setting it up right now, or the way it is set up right now.
I didn't think he'd have the ability, but he's going to have a modulated sine wave.
I've got to build an app yet.
Sine wave now, and it's not. It's it doesn't produce what it does with square wave.
Yeah, you got to keep in mind the sine wave is nice when you're talking healing frequencies, especially with the RifeTech. But when it comes down to how these coils are fundamentally operating, they build up a local flux in the space that surrounds them and in the space between the wires. And they release that flux incredibly fast, which is specifically why ultra-high-speed transistors are needed that have a really high voltage rating as well. So these are generally horizontal deflection transistors from the inside of TVs. A very small select number of MOSFETs have the low enough gate capacitance and low enough transition time to also do this. But for the most part, we're talking horizontal deflection transistors or really high-speed transistors. It's that back EMF pulse, which happens so quickly that by the time the first side of that impulse waveform has been produced and pulled out the coil, it's already been radiated into the environment, and because it's been radiated, it can't reflect back into the circuit and then oscillate. So you end up with a very non-uniform, asymmetrical, and DC biased impulse because the energy is being sent out into the environment and then captured. So you can capture this as many times as you like with as many coils as you like, and you won't see any change in the drawing power of your input because technically you're not using it on the input. You're only using that back EMF impulse.
So what do you think about the possibility on this geometric coil that he has if he uses a barrier wire that's probably like 1/32 of the size?
What do you mean a barrier wire? Can you explain?
Oh, you're talking about an outer barrier wire, like almost
Yeah,
like
that you're actually running the pulse through that helps keep the magnetosphere a little bit more in check and no more heat going out from the magnetosphere further than what the coil is.
Yeah, this
None of this
sucker
stuff
doesn't
ever gets
use
hot.
heat.
It never gets
I've
hot.
never, yeah, it never gets hot. In fact, the
It
transition
even
doesn't get
gets
hot.
cold, right? When you get
Ow.
high magnetic fields energy, it usually gets cold as opposed to hot.
Yeah, when I'm running like say 3 or 4 neons and I have 3 or 4 pickup coils through the center of this, the coil itself actually gets cold.
Really?
It's pretty interesting, yeah. But if I'm not pulling the power out, if I'm not running loads, then the coil will warm up. But if I put my pickup coils in there, it cools it right down to the point where it's actually cold to the touch.
Could you put the ferrite coil right in the center of that?
You know what? This coil here is a little bit too small to do that with, unfortunately.
Okay. Yeah,
But
I was thinking that it might fit, but it's very close because I want to see the pickup whenever it's right on the like the inside diameter
this
because
is
the electricity runs on the outside of copper.
I'd be surprised if this is going to generate much in that configuration, especially because technically your
Yeah, I want to see it go
now
down.
at 90 degrees, right? So they're not supposed to even communicate.
Yeah, I want to see it go down. I want to see it go down as in opposing factors.
What do you mean?
It's kind of like whenever you take 2 dB plus and 2 dB negative, and it's going to equal 0 dB. So if you're right on the inside and you have the same resonance within the geometric coil versus the ferrite coil, then you're going to pick up more magnetism on the ferrite coil because you do have ferrite.
Oh, I see what you mean. But the only way that because of the way that this is wired, if I set it up like this,
yeah,
it barely picks anything up. But if I set it up in the opposite direction, then that's a whole other story. If I even just like loop it like I can even separate the two, which I've done prior.
And so that's what I was looking for, is that for it to barely even pick anything up means it's, canceling each other out. Versus the 90 degrees, it's kind of not opposing, but it's a 90-degree angle. It's a acute angle.
Yeah, the field just doesn't couple at that angle.
Yeah.
The only way that it can couple is through the refractive index and the modification of that refractive index, which is something that I've shown demonstrated with magnets in a small core, where I have a coil wrapped around the ferrite ring like that, and it's just wrapped around the edge of it around the outside, and then I've got another coil around it, which is wrapped in the conventional way as we're seeing right now, through the center and back out the other side. And those two fields, they don't connect with each other, generally speaking. But if I take a small set of neodymium magnets and stick them to the side, I can force precess the atomic nuclei of the iron inside that material in order to re-spin the field coming from my pump coil, and then it gets picked up on that outside ring coil that otherwise it would never communicate with. And so we can use the atomic properties in the ferrite itself through the nuclear spin and through the electron cloud spin to transfer a flux from point A to point B. But here's the thing that's most important, and I bring this up just because it's an example of the phenomena happening. Space-time can do this too.
And what I was looking at is the space-time, because there was a very smart individual that was just showing me something recently about counterclockwise and clockwise coiling that has a pinch point in the middle.
Yes, it does.
And how they interact. If you know what I'm talking about.
I know exactly what you're talking about. In fact, I designed coils specifically for that fact. This one is it does a different sort of thing. It's not even meant for power. This is actually meant for being somewhat of a test coil for healing. But a power coil, like my old ones, let's see if I have something around here close by.
I can't wait to see the size comparison of those two
coils. Like this one here.
Yeah, this is that 3-phase coil I was talking about the other day, man.
Yeah,
that thing's a monster.
This
I want to
sucker's
see it in action.
As you can see, right?
This is a lobotomy waiting to happen. I love it.
Yeah, this thing's insane. But this is not my biggest coil. I actually have bigger. And each coil does different things. This one being trifilar, I can offset my field in different ways depending on how I wire it and what I put in between here. If I'm using capacitors, I can use a piezoelectric. The phenomenon that comes off of what these things do is absolutely insane. You could say it's almost
supernatural.
Anyway, so that's it for my presentation. Sorry to kind of take up the whole screen here, but that's where I'm at.
We specifically were asking for you
That's
to take up the
amazing.
whole screen, so I don't apologize.
Yeah,
For
thank you. Wow.
Welcome.
There's much more to come. It's just that I wasn't set up to do my, pardon the expression, Nazi Bell experiment, but it is coming. I'm almost complete.
Not the Nazi, just the bell.
Derek Locking. Just
Yeah,
Derek
well,
Locking.
I say that
You
for
should show
reference.
that thing, man, because a lot of people are on Jeremy's channel today that haven't seen what you managed to pick up. That thing is freaking awesome, and it's
I can
just
show
about
the shell.
It has. It's unfortunately it does. It's had some bad pejoratives from the History Channel and Ancient Aliens and all that stuff. But there's also the Kecksburg Bell, which I think of in Pennsylvania, which is very interesting. In 1960, whatever, 61 or something. There's a number of bells, and it's interesting how many. Yeah, the South American bells, exactly. But we have a new. Oh wow, that's
a literal Derek Locking.
There we go.
Void is
Is that-
singing.
it's
We're gonna
not
give you a real
perfect.
introduction in a second.
And then the guts are being worked on as we speak. They're actually on parts of it's on the other table. The other parts in the other room that I was testing prior today. So
In the
This
future,
is
we're all gonna
going
have
to-
guitars that are super thick and have this inside of them. It's gonna be great.
it's going to be a lot of fun in the future. So that's
Man.
it. That's me. Thank you for
That's
listening.
incredible. That's incredible.
you
Thank you
for
so much,
sharing,
Gerald.
Gerald.
Guys, and
Yes,
we're
you got
also
it,
just really, we should also explain to people where you can get some more of Gerald's material. I'm going to pull that up for a second too.
And I'm also posting it in the live chat for everyone. This
Right.
is channel WPG.
There it is. WPGN Lighten for Truth 2. And make sure you're subscribed because he had to remake his channel and he's putting some amazing stuff up. So we want to give him a pump up and make sure that you guys are aware of his next videos as they come out. He just put out something yesterday and you got to expect more stuff to come. But also, Voidus and Yang, welcome. How are you doing?
Oh, we
You're
can't
muted.
hear you. You're
hyper
muted.
muted. Yeah. Whenever you're muted, though, the best thing to do immediately is just imagine you're in a box and then just try to imagine that the walls are the same size on both, because you don't want to have the bent arm. You have to make sure it's like, you know.
You can just mime your way out of the situation.
And then you want to have like, you have to like climb over the thing. And you're just like.
Well, Andreas, you do the climb on the wall.
Or
right?
you just might have to go down the
I'm
basement.
not saying I'm a classically trained mime or anything. But
Oh.
I could
that'd be
take
crazy.
later.
Wait, is he jumped?
no,
We'll get him
we
back. We'll get him
lost
back.
him.
He's
He's come
reloading.
Human
He's
power.
reloading.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true.
There we go.
Oh, Voidus and Yang, what's up?
You gotta go in settings and change out his microphone and figure out what's.
Yeah, give yourself a second. Go into the settings. Go to your settings, and then in settings, we can't hear you. But you got to go to settings. This is always fun. If you go to settings and you go to audio, and you get audio, then you can click input mic, and you change mic to what it is that you are using.
I actually had to take out my Bluetooth, even though it was set on my iPad mic. And after
Can you hear
I took
that?
out the Bluetooth and cut it.
There he is.
Yes, we can
You
hear.
can hear that? All right. I spent a few nights in a hut out in the woods with no technology at all.
That's
So
always the way to start a show.
I have
Welcome
a
to
good
the show.
excuse.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I
What are you
was
doing?
literally like
Any
just
good adventure should begin, and
yeah. I was
each
lucky
channel
to
is the
escape.
source.
I had to escape back to civilization. So, speaking of bells, that's a good segue to the ancient Chinese tuning bells. If we think of sound in traditional Chinese culture, am I loud enough, or
Yeah, we can
am
hear
I
you.
Good.
I can.
okay? Because
I'll adjust as time goes on.
All right. So the thing is that can I talk softer? Is that all right?
Yeah,
Sure.
go ahead.
Okay. So all right. Basically, the idea of sound in China was closer to what they call qi, as energy. So the sound would transduce, and the whole idea,
Oh no.
we think of sound as a external measurement, right? Um, and it turns out that Western science actually comes from music theory. Hey, there you go. Thank you. So, we kind of have to relearn Western science because we don't realize it originated from music theory, and so that's why China is kind of a good way to look at a different way. For example, they didn't have their octaves lining up in the traditional music scale, and so instead, what they had was what is actually the natural frequencies, which would be an infinite spiral of what they called yin and yang. And it turns out the perfect fifth is yang, and then the perfect fourth is yin. But what's not recognized in the Western scale is that the perfect fifth as a undertone, which would be like, if okay, I don't want to get too abstract here, but the perfect fifth as an undertone is what becomes the perfect fourth as an overtone. And so that right there, when you learn music theory, people do not learn that basic truth, and that's essentially it. So, there's only one scientist who explains this secret, and he has a Fields Medal in math, which is harder to get than the Nobel Prize. It's called. His name is Alon Kans, and he calls it 2-3 infinity. So all you have, it's a very simple concept, but essentially what it means is that the future and the past are overlapping as a non-locality, and it's almost like too simple of an idea to accept in reality. But if you look at, is Jeremiah here, because he was asking me.
Oh yeah. That's specifically
Okay.
what I talk about was non-locality, and
Okay, great.
And how you're
Okay.
using it and defined by it.
Well, I've been discussing. Normally, I correspond with professors, and I like to, I send them, I read their stuff, and they usually answer because that's what they're paid to do, So, okay, basically, it turns out, okay, how Alon Khan, he has a great lecture called "Music of Shapes," and he has several versions of it on YouTube, and like I said, he's the only scientist who's figured out this secret of music. And so that's why I want to keep on repeating his name. It's Lain, or I'm sorry, Alain is his first name. And then Connes is his last name. And so if you type in his name and then music of shapes, you'll get his lecture. And the best example
Sorry, spell his name again.
It's Alain for Alon, and then Connes is his last name. And then type music of shapes is the name of the lecture. And yeah, and so he has several versions of that lecture on YouTube, but the best one is in French because that's his native language, right? And then there's a translator. Yeah, that's the one in French. Okay, at any rate, now if you watch this, it's hard to understand the music directly because he's talking about non-commutative geometry, which is why you got the Fields Medal. Non-commutative geometry happens to be a unified field theory, so it's his argument to unify relativity in quantum physics. But he says the simplest example of it is in music theory. Now, again, he's the only one that I could find who discovered the secret of music. That I started out training in music in Minneapolis from a young age, and so I took adult music theory when I was like 15 or something, and I noticed this logical error. And then basically in Western music, 2/3 is not allowed as the perfect fifth. and it sounds super simple. And I was studying with a university professor at the time and taking private training, and he just said, well, it's logarithms. Western music, it's based on logarithms. But then I found a book by Sir James Jeans on the science of music, and he explains, no, actually the truth of music is this infinite spiral, and that's the actual Pythagorean tuning. And so I realized that this must be the truth of reality, but I kept it to myself because I also realized the Pythagorean theorem was actually not true, which is a crazy thing to think, right? Because it's the most commonly accepted theorem of mathematics, of science, But it turns out there actually is something called the non-commutative Pythagorean theorem. And I recently had an interesting exchange with a math professor, Luke Kaufman. He focuses on non-commutativity. And I was looking at the history of the Pythagorean theorem, and all of a sudden I emailed him. It was like a Sunday night, and I said, the Pythagorean theorem is actually non-commutative. And he said, you mean this? And he sent me an unpublished proof of the, it's been published. But at any rate, this is my point, is that I realized this secret, and then I took quantum physics my first year at college. And okay, so this is the circle of fifths. This is not accurate because the actual truth is an infinite spiral of fifths. And so the octaves don't line up. And that's the traditional Chinese tuning, is that the octaves don't line up. And instead you have an infinite, what Alon Khan again calls 2-3 infinity, because
bounce back to the exact same spot where they started, and so they continuously build up a phase in difference as these tones play back on each other that is perpetually increasing to infinity.
Well, it's the other.
Oh, well, I know on the guitar it's tuned to the half. So like if you cut the string perfectly in half, and you can
this is okay right here. Okay, right here we're looking at a torus. This is an example. This is a good example of what they're trying to in non-commutativity. They use this model of the donut as it's what's called a non-commutative torus, because it's not just a donut. It's the fact that it has to twist around itself, and so you have an overlapping, and where they overlap, you inherently cannot see it. Have you ever heard of the Klein bottle?
Yeah, and this actually has the same math as the Rodin coil.
Okay, look up the Klein bottle. Just look up Klein bottles, Klein, and then bottle.
That's like a topological thing though, with no volume.
Yeah, it is. But it's also right, Jeremy. Thank you. It's two Mobius strips put together. And so the whole point is you inherently cannot see the interior unless it's invisible, right? But you can't see where they overlap because this is a 4-dimensional structure in 3-dimensional space. This is what I'm trying to get at, is that you inherently cannot see the source of sound. And see, our whole Western science is based on external measurements. And so we have to get around that concept in order to. And what I realized is that if this simple concept was true, then you could inherently resonate energy, infinitely based on listening. And so then I discovered that I discovered that there's this training called Qigong. I don't know if people heard of Qigong, but it means
a little bit.
Okay. So basically I saw a sign. Okay, well, first of all, let's just Jack Sarfati. Okay, I want to keep this relevant, right? He mentions this author Michael Grosso. He did a post recently there, Michael Grosso. He's written a couple books on Saint Joseph of Cupertino. Now, one of his books is called The Man Who Could Fly, and this book is the actual translation of the Italian biography of Saint Joseph. So Saint Joseph de Cupertino was the best documented person who could levitate. I mean, there was like reams and reams of documentation by people who wanted their worst to disprove that.
There's like a movie about it, right?
No, there's not a movie there, not that I know of. I mean, I don't know.
this sounds like something I should be deeply studying because this is exactly what we've been looking into. But
it's called The Reluctant Saint, 1962. It's
is
really
this
good.
the monk who meditated for like 40 years and was able?
I don't know. There wouldn't be a photo of him. That's not the same guy. Okay,
no, it's not. It's not a photo of him.
It's
a movie about him. A movie about.
Okay, well,
comedy.
What happened? What they did was the church kept locking him up, but see, when you're in a dark room,
his mother sent him away and didn't want him to be there.
Right at first, a monk, and he was considered a failure by normal standards. But when they locked him in a room, that was the perfect standards for him to train because it's based on not seeing, it's based on listening. And so I ended up finishing my master's degree training with this Chinese spiritual healer, and he works with the Mayo Clinic doctors in Minnesota, and he trained at Shaolin first of all, but then he finished his training at Mount Qingcheng, which is a Taoist sacred mountain, and he did 28 days of full lotus yoga, meditation with no sleep for 28 days. And when he finished that, he also levitated up 9 feet. He spiraled up.
I just have to quickly interject. Notice how this monk who is levitating in this picture has the halo around his head.
Yeah, the halo I've seen. The halo is completely real. It's completely real. I'm talking from personal experience here. I can assure you that this anti-gravity force, I can feel it right now in the center of my brain. I mean, this is totally, any of us can access this just based on this simple logical secret. And what I discovered is that in Qigong, like I said, the yang is the perfect fifth, the yin is the perfect fourth. Now there's a meditation called the small universe meditation, and that's what I relied on for my training. There's a book called Taoist Yoga, Alchemy and Immortality, and it's a free book. It's all based on the secrets of the 12 musical notes around the body. So in other words, what you're doing is you're listening to this musical scale as an infinite spiral of the 12 notes, because the 12 notes are built from the perfect fifth. Like you learn that as a circle of fifths, but it's actually an infinite spiral of fifths. And so all you have to do is close your eyes, and you can, like, the practice I did was a CD that the class I took, he made a CD, and so that's what I used to practice with. And so he goes through the 12 spots along the body, and then you just listen as the sound moves to each spot. You listen to it, and then you visualize light for each spot, and then you keep rotating around. And as you do so, you're increasing the frequency of light inside your body.
Do you mind if I ask, you're correlating toroidal field with 12 points, and you're talking about the spiraling within, and also talking about the Klein bottle. If you look up the rod and coil, isn't this the math that he based all of this off of? Because it's a 12 point, and it's toroidal, and it has like the fourth and the fifth harmonics.
Just let me just finish my talk here, okay? Just let me focus on what I need to talk about. All right, I'm not done yet.
Get it all out, and then we'll go on to the other aspects of it.
Let's all be chill. Yeah.
Okay. Let me get to basic. We're talking about what's called mathematical ontology. Okay. If you look up Professor Tim Maudlin, he's on Science Channels. He will talk about what's called mathematical ontology. Okay, we're talking about the meaning of the difference between discrete number and continuous number. So what happened is Philolaus, and this is before Socrates, the origin of Western music theory is also the origin of the irrational number in mathematics, the square root of 2. So the major second music interval was originally 9/8, and that was cubed to be the tritone. The first approximation of the tritone was actually the square root of 2. And you can find this in Peter Pesick's book called Music in the Making of Modern Science. And he's a professor at St. John's University. Okay, so if you cube 9/8, this is Platonic philosophy, and he secretly got it from Archytas. Okay, Archytas learned it from Philolaus. Now, what Philolaus did was he flipped his lyre around, And by flipping his lyre around, he changed the root tonic. Because if you really train in music theory, it's all based on the root tonic. In other words, what's the source of the one? Because of the source of the one tells you what the octave is, what the perfect fifth is in relation to the one. It turns out that the perfect fourth can never be a natural overtone of the root tonic. That the ratio 4/3, because the 3 has a different denominator than the root tonic of the 1, because the natural overtones, they have to maintain the same root tonic. In other words, they have to be a 1 or an octave harmonic in the denominator. Okay, so if you have 4/3, the only way to get 4/3 as a perfect fourth in music tuning is to achieve it from 2/3, which is the perfect fifth, as an undertone. But you're not allowed to use 2/3 as the perfect fifth, because Xirtus created the first logarithmic equation in Western mathematics, which is the perfect fifth plus the perfect fourth equals the octave. Now, how many people?
How do we spell Xirtus?
Archyts. Or no, TYS, sorry. Archytys. How many people have learned this in basic music theory? The perfect fifth plus the perfect fourth equals the octave. Anybody with me on that? Okay.
Yep, heard that here, and I have a lifetime of playing with
so you can go as high tech as you want, but the thing is you have to really study the logic. You have to really study the logic of what this stuff means. Like, in other words, that was the very first logarithmic equation, but it was based on the wrong music theory. Now, from that first equation, the perfect fifth plus the perfect fourth equals the octave. That's where they got the square root of 2 originally. And if that was documented by math professor Luigi Borzicchini, and I've corresponded with him starting in 2001 after my master's degree. So, for example, the major third as 5/4 was the first approximation of the cube root of 2. And the cube root of 2 is what launched modern science, because you have three-dimensional geometry, But the thing is that it's that whole concept of irrational magnitude assumes a symmetric conversion of time into space, when in fact, time is actually asymmetric to frequency. It's inherently an eternal motion. That's what non-commutative is, because commutative means an inherent symmetry to the mathematics. So it's like, it's abstract.
There it is. That's what I wanted. That really gets right down to the core of what I wanted to understand from you.
Okay, so this is why Alain Kahn calls it 2-3 infinity. Now, how many people have heard of the Pythagorean comma? Basically, what that is that you create the 12 notes of the scale from the perfect fifth, right? But what happens is as you build up the perfect fifths, when you get to 7 octaves, the 12 fifths go slightly beyond the octave. So when you divide the octaves, the perfect fifths back into the same octave scale, they don't line up with the octave, for the basic reason that 3 doesn't go into 2. They'll never line up. So what everybody assumes in the West, it's like, okay, no big deal. You just slightly change the tuning, and then you get equal temper tuning, and you can have harmony, and that's much better. But guess what? You just lied. You've just lied about the truth of reality. Now, if you want to lie, fine, go ahead and lie. But you have just destroyed the foundation of reality. Now, look at every culture on the planet. Every human culture has music. They all use the octave, the perfect fifth, and the perfect fourth. And the truth of it is, if you study our original human culture in Africa that we all came from, it's still around. They have a snake statue from 70,000 years ago. It's you can look it up. It's a snake statue. It's called N/OM, because they have that clicking language. It's in South Africa, and this is their energy, the nom energy. It's the same thing as chi. Every male in that culture is required to do this musical spiritual energy training. And that used to be the core focus of our whole original culture. And because of that training, all the males, the women danced, or the women sang. They sang all night long, and the males danced all night long. And the women, by the women singing, they would send their energy into the males, because the voice actually communicates what would be called yin chi. It's a type of energy, and then the dancing is what ionizes that energy. And so essentially you're transducing again the sound into a higher frequency. And so in terms of what I did for the past 20 years is I converted that all into modern science. So essentially, like if you look at Stuart Hameroff and Roger Penrose, what they've discovered is that ultrasound is the quantum coherence of the microtubules in the neurons, and those are metamaterials. And the tubulin inside the microtubules resonates at the terahertz, which is the blue lights. We already have that blue light, and that's what is the quantum non-locality that Roger Penrose calls proto-consciousness. It's already in our neurons. So all we have to do is meditate, and we'll see this blue light already. And then when we see that blue light, we're absorbing virtual photons from the future. Now, according to relativistic science, virtual photons are just a mathematical abstraction.
What a bunch of BS.
What about what?
I said, what a bunch of BS coming from that. This whole idea of virtual fields and virtual particles is entirely impractical and bunk.
Okay, what I'm trying to say is there's already been experiments that have proven that they can absorb virtual photons and then turn it into increased photon energy. In other words, all virtual photons are is a time reversed negative frequency energy. And this is what Louis de Broglie first discovered when he was critiquing relativity from quantum physics, because what he discovered, he got the Nobel Prize, right? But he said himself his greatest discovery was what he called the law of phase harmony, because as a particle goes towards the speed of light, based on quantum physics, the frequency goes up because the frequency is directly proportional to the momentum. But due to relativity, the time also goes up, so the wavelength gets bigger. But all the way back to Pythagoras, based on music theory, frequency is inverse to time. Therefore, logically, for both relativity and quantum physics to be true, there has to be a time reversed negative frequency from the future that is guiding matter all the time. And he called this the law of phase harmony. And it's not taught in physics class, even though he said that's his greatest discovery. And the reason it's not taught is because it's also non-commutative, which means the only way it can exist is if there's not a symmetric rest frame in which you can measure something assuming a symmetric time invariance as a spatial measurement.
Okay.
So,
go ahead, sorry.
So in other words, this is very easy to do. Like anybody can practice this as meditation, and you can immediately increase your energy. You'll feel like if you study Wim Hof, like the Wim Hof breathing, right? That's essentially a type of way of increasing the frequency in your body. That's a foundation. That's one foundation for it. But what you're doing through meditation, you're synchronizing your visualization with your breathing. But what you're really doing is you're listening to the source of your thoughts. And the thoughts originally are actually light. It's actually biophotons internally. I mean, science has proven we actually emit biophotons. And what Roger Penrose calls it negative resonance, because what's happening is that the quantum Schumann resonance is actually the negative frequency. It's like, like the slow backwards wobble of planet Earth, it's, the planet spins, but it has a slow backwards wobble.
26,000 year cycle.
Exactly.
Right.
So
the precession is in the opposite direction of the rotation.
Exactly. That's why it's non-commutative. See, that's what makes it non-commutative. Just like 2/3 and 3/2 are non-commutative to the one.
Yeah.
In other words,
screen, I'm actually demonstrating what that phase coherence looks like on my screen right now. Just using a signal generator, a scope, and the math function on that scope to show the phase coherence between those two. So we're looking at different waveforms that are superimposed on each other. One of these is coming in at exactly 1 kilohertz. and there we'll turn them both to 1 kilohertz. And now I'm going to just change this by 0.1 hertz.
Okay,
And
you just said hertz. You said hertz. Hertz.
Well,
Hertz.
right.
Hertz.
This is
you said
I'm not
hertz,
using-
right?
Yes,
You're not listening to me. Hertz assumes a symmetric measurement. Hertz is symmetric frequency. Okay.
Right. Well, if I change it to square wave, we could talk cycles per second, and then we're actually,
No, seconds assumes a symmetric geometry. The concept of seconds already is we have to go all the way back to before Plato. See,
but
that's
actually your whole basis upon all of these theories is based off the equal Thermit circle.
I get what you're saying, because time.
Can I just say something here? Okay, I posted in the chat. There's a guy named Pierre Desmarais. He got a research grant at University of Arizona. He calls it 5 bits. It's the exact same concept. He's using it for room temperature, superconducting, quantum computing. It's the same exact concept. He has the non-commutative phase of the 2 frequencies, and he uses that to create a superposition, and he says there's no need to collapse any quantum wavelength. He can have a classical approximation using acoustic phonons, and he does use ultrasound. And so look at his research. I posted the link in the chat. You can go to the chat wherever it was and look up Pierre Desmarais, Deymer. He's got
if you
all.
Put it in the private chat. I can share it on the screen.
Yeah,
too.
or you
I
can
don't
just
think
type.
anybody's disagreeing with you. I think it's just.
I'm just saying,
more
look
so
up
the
Pierre
communication on the words that
Desmarais.
we're
Look up Pierre Desmarais, and he's got all the graphs and all the high tech stuff you want. He's got all that stuff with the phase and the frequencies, and you can look at it, and he's got the same concept. So all you have to do is type in Pierre, and then the last name is Deymer, and you look that up, and he's got a book. He's got a book on it. He calls it 5 bits, and he says this is the secret of quantum computing. My own quantum physics professor, he uses the same non-commutative concept for the quantum teleportation NASA satellite system that he's set up. He's having it tested by NASA right now. Like China already has a quantum teleportation system, but he's saying that the non-commutative one cannot be hacked. It cannot be hacked because it's non-commutative, and he uses that same model. It's the torus. It's not just a torus though, because you have to overlap what they call the SU2. It's a double. It's what's called a 2 sphere. It's like you have a block sphere, but it's actually a 2 sphere because in quantum physics you have a Heisenberg uncertainty principle. Non-commutativity is before the uncertainty principle. The Heisenberg uncertainty principle originates from time frequency uncertainty. Now, what's been proven is that in listening to music, we can listen up to 10 times faster than time frequency uncertainty. Okay, we can listen. Our process of quantum biology is more complex than physics. You can talk to Nobel physicist Brian Josephson about this. He created the Josephson effect that you can't have MRI machines without a Josephson superconductor, Josephson junction superconductor. His whole emphasis right now is that biology is more complex. Roger Penrose says the same thing. So does the collaborator of David Bohm. Basil J. Hiley's professor says that quantum physics is not mechanics. It's actually an organic process of consciousness. It's what they call proto-consciousness. In other words, the universe is inherently alive. It has sentience at the fundamental level. That's what proto-consciousness it is. It's not thinking. It's like inherent active information from the future that's secretly guiding us all the time.
Yeah, and I wasn't trying to sound like I was disagreeing with you on that. I understand what you mean with the problem of time, the problem of the SI unit second, because it does assume a symmetrical geometry, and that was a consensus by the scientific community because they kept on getting different measurements for the speed of light, and it was really screwing things up. And ultimately, we needed some kind of standard So instead of accepting that the dynamics of space and time itself are actually all based on variables that can be modified with electric, magnetic, and other types of fields, instead they just decided to pick one solid number and adjust everything to it. And so we get gauge theory and gauge factors where we just assume.
Okay, can I just say something? Okay, Alon Khan's, he makes this point in his talk on music of shapes. If you listen to that talk, he talks about the standards, and it used to be that the wavelength was the standard, but that got changed to frequency, So in other words, time and frequency are now the origin. Like time is no longer a spatial measurement; it's inherently a frequency measurement. Now, his big point is that Heisenberg discovered that the origin of the absorption spectrum is actually non-commutative frequency of light. Now, see, my whole point is like Alon Khan's, he says the simplest example is music theory, the truth of music theory. So what I didn't finish explaining is that with the Pythagorean comma, essentially the way it's taught is that it's normally just you have the perfect fifths don't line up with the 12 perfect fifths don't line up with the 7 octaves, and so they're divided back, and then they're compromised into the equal tempered logarithms. So you get you have 12 notes times the square root of 2, 12th root of 2 for the logarithms. But his whole point is that actually the exponentials are non-commutative when you invert them. So what that means is that you have when you have the Pythagorean comma, it's 2 to the 12. It's 3 to the 12th because it's 12 perfect fifths, and then it's 2 to the 19th because it's 7 octaves as 2, but then you're taking 3/2 of the perfect fifth and you're adding it to the octaves. So you have 12 plus 7, so it's 2 to the 19th. So you have 3 to the 12th, then you have 2 to the 19th. But when you take it when you divide that back into the octave, because it's non-commutative, therefore you have 3 to the 1/12th and 2 to the 1/19th. I mean, you have 3 to the 1/19th and 2 to the 1/12th. You see what I'm saying? They're non-commutative because you have to invert the exponentials.
Right, exactly. Like we're just looking at a slight difference between the interaction frequency of these waves. They don't line up with each other, so they're going to continuously create a motion or a drift between them that's never going to be balanced out. It'll never be balanced.
Now, what Kahn's point is that the non-commutative numbers, those discrete ratios, are actually more dense than the real number continuum. So when everybody learns, the real number continuum, which is the basis for the calculus, when you get to like Basil J. Hiley he's using non-commutativity to explain this newly discovered quantum potential force, that David Bohm discovered, which is the same thing what Louis de Broglie discovered. You have this pilot wave from the future that's guiding the matter. Okay, but what Basil J. Hiley's emphasizing is that also it's non-commutative, and so it's, let's see, what was I just saying? Essentially, it's a newly discovered force, and it was even covered up by Richard Feynman. Basil J. Hiley has a recent talk that he gave to the Pari Center. If you look up PARI and then Center, it's on YouTube, and then look up Basil J. Hiley, and he and I've been emailing. He says, well, that talk is for non-professionals. And what he does is he explains in detail why Richard Feynman is wrong. Okay, just scroll down and you'll get to his talk. Or no, you have to look it up on YouTube. If you go to the Pari Center YouTube channel, it'll be on the YouTube channel. Okay, so essentially, this is a newly discovered force. Okay, it's still not recognized by most of physics because they're still using. My point was, like, when you get to non-commutativity, the calculus has to be from the future and the past at the same time. It's what they call non-commutative calculus. You know, so you're not using the real number continuum anymore. But that's a whole nother thing, like the mathematics, like if you want to get into that, but yeah, this his talk? I can't, it's the screens. Yeah, that's the talk. So you have to watch that whole talk. Okay, so so no, Jack Sarfati, he literally was trying to claim that Saint Joseph de Cupertino was a ET alien from the future. No, well, you could say technically he is from the future, because you have to time travel in order to have any of these abilities. It's inherently precognitive. In other words, the original source of all these other spiritual, like levitation or anti-gravity, originates from precognition.
Yeah. Speaking of gravity and strange phenomena, let me pull this up on screen one more time for you. So let me activate my camera. And when you found this, and I don't know how you ended up finding it in this paper, but you found this fantastic demo experiment. And boy, what a fascinating one it was. So I showed this on Bernie's channel now, AlienScientist. Audience gets to see it too. So it is extremely simple. I've got a line drawn on each of these magnets. And what's going to happen is right now they're attracted pole to pole, so north to south or south to north. And if I give any kind of rotation to these test tubes, we're going to that they roll up, but they always move up. Now, here's the thing.
Hey, that's awesome, man.
I don't actually
have going, Jeremiah.
All I got to do is wiggle this back and forth. They don't even have to roll around in order to always move up. So I'm going to get them pretty close to the tube top so that we can actually see this a little bit better.
Hey, that's really cool. I can't believe you replicated that.
Oh, as soon as I seen that video, I'm like, I have to do this. I have to do this. So I ordered the magnets that night. And so if I place this sideways and I rotate the tubes, we're noticing that the magnets aren't rolling, the lines aren't moving, and they're staying in place. If I even give this the slightest tilt,
then they go
right back to actually try to rotate these, and I can't rotate them in opposite directions because the tubes are pulling together so tightly. I can hear the glass wanting to crack. I already busted off the bottom of one of these.
Yeah.
But
would it work? Would it work with plastic? Do they make plastic test tubes?
Perfectly fine with plastic. It works with anything. In fact, you could even use this on a flat surface with cylinder magnets. But the effectiveness and how fast the stuff, how it's always up, doesn't matter which way you flip it. Doesn't matter exactly what angle that it's at, as long as the angle is not perfectly flat. I mean, even this little angle, we can see that it's actually turning it, and this is barely tilted, so it doesn't take much. So what's happening, and I have to really study the physical geometry of the magnetic fields here and what gravity is doing to cause this phenomena. And so we're looking at two spheres, and if those points between my fingers are exactly where the poles are touching, what's happening is gravity wants to pull this down, wants to pull this down. But of course, the poles are in contact with the test tube, and the test tube has enough friction where they can't slide down. But gravity is still pulling on them, and the back of those spherical magnets are not in contact, so they're actually getting tilted at an angle like this. And so when one of those tubes move and these try to roll against each other, they're rolling on the tube at a slight angle. And if I were to take, and this is what I did to kind of demonstrate this the other day, if I take this at 90 degrees where one of these bearings can no longer rotate, I can still make this one roll, and we can see it's rotating because there is just a tiny little angle, tiniest bit of an angle. But if there's actually an angle at which if I hold these two things perfectly flat to Earth, it will not rotate, and it's very, very sensitive to which side is being pulled down in the gravitational field. So it has everything to do with the fact that one part of the magnet is being pulled down more than the other. Their interface at the surface from friction is being tilted, and that causes them to have just ever so slightly a continuous precession in one direction when they are given angular momentum. And that momentum is shifted 90 degrees, just like, when you push down on a gyroscope, the side that you push down on does not go down. It's actually a 90-degree shift around, and that's the side that goes down. Same thing here.
Yeah, you know what you're reminding me of is Basil J. Hiley. He in that talk I told you about, in his recent papers, he's been talking about the Coriolis effect. And he's saying that the Coriolis effect actually originates from this quantum potential. And that's like a macroscopic example
that's
of
awesome.
of the quantum potential. And basically, you know, the Richard Feynman diagrams that they're so famous. He says that there's actually an extra twist in those diagrams, and that's what the quantum potential is. But it, you know, you have to put an extra twist in those diagrams in order to understand the quantum potential. So, and he's he's doing experiments right now that prove if you look up the weak measurement experiments of Yakir Aronoff, you know, I don't know if you've ever heard of the Aronoff-Bohm effect. But essentially,
yeah, absolutely. I understand completely why that happens, and also why they had so much confusion on getting it wrong at first. It's because the electron drift velocity through the wire produces another type of field that's not at all in the Maxwellian mathematics, and it's nowhere beside Gibbs' adaptation of those mathematics. It's been totally missing, and that's the variable gauge factor being produced by the polarization of the vacuum caused by the flow of the electrons inside the wire and the lack of flow of the protons inside the wire. So there's an extra electric field. It moves along with those charges, and because only the electrons or the negative charges are moving, it generates an actual motional wave that causes one of the two electron beams passing around. You know, the one that's actually going against the direction of the motion of flow through the solenoid coil is going to slow down slightly, and then the one that is going in the direction of the flow of those rotating electrons around the solenoid is going to speed up slightly, so they get out of phase because they're interacting with real variable refractive index modifications of the vacuum caused by the motion of charges.
Okay. Yeah, I'm I mean, there's continual discussion and debate about the Aronoff-Bohm effect, but I think Basil Hiley, I mean, he understands it because, I mean, he worked closely. He co-authored books with David Bohm. He was David Bohm's, you know, collaborator. Let me get some water. But there's another thing is the neutron spin experiments. But this is what my professor, he first proposed this experiment in 1967, and essentially because the neutron doesn't have any charge or magnetic, I guess you would call it charge, right, or field, your current, but it's neutral. It's and so so you can actually visualize the spin using the Stern-Gerlach. Well, no, what they do is they split the neutron using interference. You know, so it's entangled. It's one neutron entangled with itself. But what they proved is that the spin is inherently non-local.
I've got to look more into that.
The spin doesn't exist in space-time.
Of course, the next obvious question would be, where does it exist in, or what medium is it being transferred or carried?
See, this is Lee. Okay, Lee Smallin. He took his first quantum physics class from the same professor I had, Herbert J. Bernstein at Hampshire College, and actually Jack Sarfati was at San Diego with Herbert Bernstein. Jack and I had a bunch of emails together recently when I told him about how I had been a student of Herb Bernstein. Anyway, so what was I talking about? The neutron spin. What was I talking about? At any rate,
you're talking about non-commutative or non-communicative nature of the neutron's magnetic moment, and how it can be quantum locked with itself or with its own field.
Yeah, the non-commutative spin. Oh yeah, it's what Roger Penrose calls fundamental time, and he got that phrase from Lee Smallin. Okay, Lee Smallin was a student of the same teacher I had. Like, okay, the thing about Herb Bernstein is he says that everybody should take quantum mechanics as their very first physics class, because quantum mechanics is the foundation of science now. And see, I never took physics in high school, and so quantum physics, it was, well, okay, Herb Bernstein, he taught us the Dirac dance. It's called the Dirac dance, and he taught that to demonstrate quantum entanglement or non-locality. And you can see this. There's videos on it on YouTube, but essentially you just imagine you have a wine glass in your hand, and then you have to keep the glass upright, see, and then you have to spin your hand around like that, and then come back up like that. Now that is non-commutativity right there. Now what that's demonstrating is the 1/2 spin of the electron has to be a 720 degrees spin in order to be observable. In other words, as a 1/2 spin, the electron is inherently non-local at the foundation reality. But in order for science to observe the electron, it has to
assume reality.
It has to do this 720 degree spin back into itself. That's the fifth dimension that inherently cannot be seen. And so that exists everywhere. In other words, at each 0 point in space-time, there already is this spin like that. See what I just did? Like
Yep,
that,
I'm taking its act right there. The physical.
And what that is time. That's actually pure time. It's the future and the past overlapping as fundamental time. You can look up that phrase, fundamental time. That's what Roger Penrose uses. Alon Khan calls it primitive time, and then math professor Lou Kaufman calls it primordial time. And so, see, the whole point of Lee Smolin, he's written several books on this, is that in physics, time is assumed to be not only a external measurement, but a symmetrical spatial measurement. That's what they call time invariance.
Yeah, it cannot be. There's just no way that physics does not work if time is truly symmetrical. It only works in the very low application sense of, you can hook a battery to a coil, but you talk particle accelerator physics, and all of a sudden all these strange phenomena start coming into play. And anytime we were talking high velocity or relativistic velocity particles or field interactions that can be phase shifted or become coherent with each other, basically build up on each other, now time suddenly becomes a variable, but that makes the mathematics incredibly difficult, involves differential equations, and physicists freaking hate it. So it's been all but wiped out of our language.
And what Basil J. Hiley's big point is that when Richard Feynman introduced renormalization, what he was doing was covering up this non-commutative, non-local quantum potential force.
Absolutely.
And that's the anti-gravity force. And so if you just go to that Basil J. Hiley, that the Pierre Damer guy, he's using that to create quantum computing, superconducting room temperature quantum computing. He's using the exact same concept of non-commutative frequency as a non-local resonance for, you can study if you want all the technical stuff, but I just do it as quantum.
Practical application and real physical implementation of these concepts is really where I want to focus, because it can't literally work if physics as it stands today in the mainstream is correct. These things are impossible, but yet we can see them, observe them, use them, and we are using them right now. So obviously something's wrong, and it needs to be fixed.
That's why I study science, but like Roger Penrose's point is that calculations are not consciousness. And so, in other words, this whole fixation with artificial intelligence and that's all inherent to the mathematics ever since Plato. In fact, Luigi Borzicchini, he wrote a book called Plato's Computer, because literally from the very first origin of irrational magnitude mathematics, because of that logical error, you can predict the development of the technology. I mean, it started with catapults. I mean, it really started with chariot wheels, and then catapults, and then cannons, but essentially you can practically predict, artificial intelligence just from the wrong mathematics. It just keeps escalating through the logarithmic dimensions. And there's another term for this called the music logarithmic spiral. And this is what I just finished a book on this about a mind control scientist, Andrija Puharic. And there's going to be a Netflix documentary about Andrija Puharic this spring. And they might be citing my research because I looked up in the archives. He corresponded with this professor who was working with the UN think tank that was set up with all these high-level physicists. And they were basically, they're trying to create this applied physics model. Einstein was a big supporter of it. The Institute of Advanced Study at Princeton, and they're trying to create a unified field theory, but it's all based on this, what they call the music logarithmic spiral. In other words, if you keep extending the logarithmic musical ratios into higher dimensions of logarithms, and that's what physics is. It's all based on symmetry. You see?
If I were to quote Tesla, and in his time, today's scientists have substituted mathematics for experiment, and they wander off aimlessly into equation after equation, eventually building a structure which has no relation to reality. He's absolutely right. They've gotten so lost in the dogmatism of their own symmetrical equations that they have completely forgotten about the real physics and the fact that a physical universe exists that doesn't obey what's on their papers. And so I know it gets more complicated when we start to consider that everything in the universe, including the speed of light, is a variable, but we have to if we want to ever move forward, because we've had the same tech for like 100 years. We're not moving forward. The stuff is out there. It's being used and tested, but in extremely isolated events by universities and by accelerator labs, and it's never actually made its way into any kind of practical application. But using this tech, we can ground pump electrons, extract extra energy, convert Brownian motion directly against what Lord Kelvin said, which is it's impossible to ever utilize or rectify Brownian motion. We know that that's definitely not true. We could even access things like, large-scale Casimir effect type forces using nano rectennas. And there's just so much power, so much potential, and so much ability to manipulate the dynamics of our three-dimensional space-time by using this other field force that's totally not recognized, which is what I've been calling the T field, or the temporal field. And it's something that grows out of the interaction between two waves that aren't perfectly matched up with each other, but can still build upon each other.
Yeah, I think if you look at Pierre Damer, I mean, you'll be able to relate to his research because it's all has the same kind of oscilloscope, graphs and all that. And that's what he's doing. He's saying this is very simple. It's acoustic phonons that are superconducting at room temperature, and you can use this for quantum computing. That's all you have to. You just have to understand this concept of non-commutative phase. As soon as you understand that, then you can maintain a non-local resonance between the two frequencies. You adjust one of them and you use the other one as a reference wave. And I'm not gonna, I've quoted his work from years before, and I read it and it was like, that's the exact same concept. And he had the mathematical equation. I'm like, that's the exact same concept, but that's all I needed to know. He understands the foundation. So what he does with that's now for me, if you go back to this quote you made about Tesla and the experiment and getting the science versus the experiment, it goes all the way back to Plato, because Plato argued that the Platonic realm was based on this inherent symmetric two-ness that existed before number, and his argument was based on the human body. And he said, look, it's self-evident that our two eyes are symmetric, our two hands are symmetric, our two legs are symmetric. But if you look at Taoist alchemy, they'll say the exact opposite. They say the left eye is yin qi and yang shen, the right eye is yang qi and yin shen, and on and on. It's all complementary opposites. Now there's a guy named Eddie Oceans, and he was a physicist at Stanford Linear Accelerator Center, and he coined this phrase, quantum psychology, and he tried to teach it to Carl Pribram. And people have probably heard of Carl Pribram, right? The holographic brain model. He was the first, he promoted that idea, but he couldn't understand non-commutativity. And Eddie Oceans was trying to explain. Eddie Oceans realized the secret of Wing Chun and of what they call Neigong and its internal martial arts is non-commutativity. So essentially, like when you learn the Dirac dance, this essential move, it's you know, you can look that up on YouTube, but in Tai Chi, that's called the silk reeling exercise. And essentially what it means is the outside of your hand is yang, the inside of your hand is yin, your upper body is yang, your lower body is yin. And so when you do this motion, you're putting the yang against the yin of the lower body, and then the yin of the hand against the yang of the upper body. And that's
yes, the time you've rotated your hand around and it's done a full 720 degrees, what's happened is the yang and the yin have both existed in the exact same spot at different times, but yet in the exact same space. And so that whole idea where they can exist in the same space, not at the same time, that they do cross that same path. This is where we get that full yin yang chase loop where it never ends and they're always trying to follow each other, but they never catch up.
And this is what scares people, because like if you really study music, you have to memorize music, right? But at some point you have to start, when you're memorizing music, you have to really listen to the source of the music, and then you have to start wondering, well, where does the music come from? Because most people, when they learn music, they assume, you know, it's using an external instrument. But if you look at our original human culture, they're just hand clapping and singing. They're not using any instruments. You know, you don't, in fact, the best music is, the whole point is that it's the source of sound is actually the source of consciousness itself. And there's no beginning or end to that. You know, it's an eternal energy motion. And that's what, it's another example of what happens in deep dreamless sleep. You know, it's like where people ignore the fact that they still exist in deep dreamless sleep. They assume like they're just a biological machine, you know, that turns off at night and turns on in the morning. But in fact, the real self of who a person is actually exists during deep dreamless sleep. And so instead, people identify themselves, you know, with their thoughts, their perceptions, and they ignore the source of who they are during deep dreamless sleep. You know, and if you really go into deep meditation, then you can start having visions that are more real than being awake. And when you have a precognitive vision, it's actually more lucid. And this has all been confirmed in quantum biology, because what they've proven is that, for example, the sense of smell is actually non-local. It's inherently non-local based on non-commutative phase. And they explain it by like Eric Clapton using a left-handed or right-handed guitar, you know, with like Jimi Hendrix using a left-handed guitar. What you're doing is in the sense of smell is you have the same quantum frequency of a molecule. Like with orange and lemon, it's the same exact quantum frequency, but what you're doing is you're changing the phase, and it's a non-commutative phase, and then you get a different smell. And that non-commutative phase is actually non-local. And that's also how photosynthesis works. They've proven that plants, the energy of sunlight absorbed turned into electrochemical energy by plants, is inherently non-local, and it's superluminal. And so this is going on all the time, and you can actually experience that through meditation. You can experience that all your perceptions and senses originate from this ether of energy. That's energy information, and it resonates from the future. So you can constantly be having visions from the future. Like the more you go into it.
Yeah, well, it's true. Fundamentally, all things that we feel, experience, taste, touch, smell, hear, and feel, all of those things are coming through the field forces conveyed through the vacuum itself. It's not billiard balls. They're coming through the vacuum itself, which means that the medium in which everything that is matter in the three-dimensional world exists must then transfer any interaction it has with other particles that are physical matter through this other medium that has been all but erased. And that was, you know, Einstein's big thing when he first started to work on relativity was he really hated the idea of this aether, because it meant that there was some kind of medium that had lots and lots of different properties, and that made everything real complicated. So he tried to simplify it, because, you know, science used to have this idea of let's simplify everything down to the most basic components so that we can understand it and then go from there. But at some point, that oversimplification got stuck. And I think it's because gotten so complicated in our understanding of the universe and added so many details that we've kind of maxed out the human brain capacity to process more, which is now the big push for why physicists are trying to get AI to process this stuff beyond human capacity so that we can move on past it. But you know what AI is going to tell us? Everything in the universe is variable. There are no constants. There are no gauge. There is no such thing as a solid gauge factor, and zero does not frickin' exist.
So, Basil J. Hiley has a great quote from Einstein, and it turns out this physicist in India, B.G. Siddharth, has the same quote, and B.G. Siddharth also focuses on non-commutativity. And it turns out that Einstein, at some point, he realized that the mathematics of Heisenberg was the secret of essentially the ether, and he said that we would have to get rid of the space-time continuum as we know it. And the mathematics of Heisenberg is the non-commutative algebra. That is, and so Basil J. Hiley has that quote, and so does B.G. Siddharth. It's just like a couple sentences from Einstein, and I'm sure that they don't know each other. Maybe they do, but B.G. Siddharth, he predicted the accelerating expansion of the universe, and he should have got the Nobel Prize for that. But he said, because of racism or whatever, because he's from India. But at any rate,
His Highness Skunkworks doesn't have a name for this. Well, yeah, that's kind of half true, but they do have a department for it. Because they don't have a name for it, they call it weird science and fucking magic. And that's because the rest of the engineers have no idea how this small group of super intuitives that are also engineers can do what they can do with the stuff that they have. They're using common materials. They're using conventional application and power supplies to do things that are quite frankly freaking impossible and look so close to magic that even Skunkworks doesn't know how to classify it. But they find these people, bring them in. And I think it's pretty fascinating that they call it weird science and fucking magic, because they have no idea how else to place it.
Wizards.
Yeah, I gotta plug in my computer here. So I suppose I should log off because I'm losing. Can you still see me?
Yeah, we can still see you.
Okay.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah. My computer's not plugged in, so I got to plug it in, or I could keep going. But yeah, I mean, Roger Penrose I'll just say this is my last point, is that he says that the gravitational the source of life on Earth is from negative entropy, which is also the gravitational potential of the sun, and that originates from frequency. He says that mass originates from frequency due to the De Broglie Einstein relation.
We're starting to lose you.
No,
it looks like your computer has gone.
His point is that
you got cut out. You're cutting out because I think you're low power on your computer right now. So
his point.
Please plug in your computer and continue.
The gravitational entropy is the opposite of the entropy of matter, and so all of our technology has tried to
see. I just love how this happens. Right, he's getting right into the good stuff. Gravity is the non-communicative nature of matter, and we're talking about the details, and of course we can't hear anything he's saying because we're getting fractions. Always like that, isn't it? Just so you know, Void, we still can't hear all of your words yet, but let's give that a test as soon as you get that thing plugged in.
Yeah, hopefully you're able to.
Hold on.
It was extremely choppy.
All right.
There we go. See, now we can hear you perfectly.
There we go. Plugging it in.
Yeah.
Hey guys, I'm gonna dip out and go to bed. This was awesome, super fascinating stuff here tonight, and I'm going to end it on my channel here.
Yeah, I'll end it on yours, and I'll keep it going on mine here, and might also end it on Xirtus's. But yeah, we're ending it on Alien Scientist right now, but it shall continue on Crypto Alchemist, which I'm putting in the live chat right now.
So before you dash, and let me ask you, Void, do you mind if Void, do you mind if Jeremy forwards me your email address? I want to send you some of those video clips so you can post them up on your channel for that replication of the experiment.
Oh, all right, I'm back.
Much love, Jeremy. I'm ending it on you right now.
Okay,